All right. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Ray Law from the Office of Cannabis. As of now, we have 5 members from the Oversight Committee to be on this WebEx meeting. So the meeting now will get started very soon. And Madam Chair, the floor is yours.
Can everybody see me?
Yes.
Yes. And Nina, I think you're muted.
All right, I'm officially on now, right?
Yes, you are.
Good.
Right.
Thanks, Dave, and thanks, Nikesh. Appreciate it.
No problem.
This is great. Happy to see that we have quorum at 1:02. This is wonderful because we have a lot to dig into today. We've started to make a lot of progress, and we'll hear more during the Office of Cannabis's report back. But before we get into the meeting, I'm going to just run through some basic virtual cultural ground rules for how we're going to conduct this meeting and how people will participate. So there's going to be public comment after every agenda item. The agenda item can be down. The agenda and all of the materials for this meeting can be down on the Office of Cannabis website. If you look for meetings on the Office of Cannabis website, it will have a downloadable link there. For all the members of the community that are joining us online and would prefer to submit, oh, here we go. Sorry about the public comments. Here we go. If you're a member of the public and you want to make the public comment, you will be given 2 minutes to make your comment, and we will let you know when you have 30 seconds left. Here we go. If you'd like to submit your comments in writing, you can submit them in the chat box and we will read them out. For those of you guys that are joining via the phone, or if you're joining online, remember that public comment is given through a dial-in. So please dial into 1-408-418-9388. And you're going to input the following access code. I'm going to read it slow and then I'm going to read it again. Okay, so the access code is 146-043-2427. Again, the access code is 146-043-2447. And then when prompted, right, you're going to hear, okay, so you'll be able to hear the meeting. And then when you want to get into the queue to speak and give public comment, press *3. And then you'll be given some instructions. And when you get unmuted, you'll hear like a robotic voice saying you have been unmuted, and you have 2 minutes from there to give your public comment. Okay. Let's see, what else do we have to? So basically the committee members know when we get into discussion, raise your hand. I put my view on being able to see all the members, so I can see you raise your hand physically versus like pressing in the queue to raise your hand. And then we'll just commence with our conversation from there. So those are just the basic virtual etiquette kind of things that we got to run through to get through this agenda. All right.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the announcement. Before we move on to the next agenda item, I just want to let everyone know that Nikesh is working with Doug to get on this call because he is having some technical issues.
Got it. Thank you for that. Okay, so Dave, can you take us to the roll call?
Absolutely. Let's see. So if you could just indicate your presence with the present, I'll just list the names of our voting members, starting with seat 8, Ali Jamalian. That was a present. Seat 9, Aaron Flynn.
Present.
Thank you. Seat 10, Jessica Cry. Jessica, I think you might be on. I know you're there. Let's see.
We can't hear you, Jessica.
Guys hear me now?
Yes,
Okay, sorry, present.
got it. C11 is Doug Block, who Nikesh is now assisting with joining, so he'll be on.
And David, he's actually on the line now, so
Oh,
you just give him a second.
great. Welcome, Doug. So we'll move on. Seat 12, Sean Richard.
Present.
Great. Seat 13, Nina Parks.
Present.
Seat 14, Jesse.
Present.
Seat 15, Teresa Foglio. Teresa, are you with us? Okay, to be noted as absent.
No, she's here. She's here.
Oh,
She's. Oh, can you unmute yourself again, Teresa?
Yeah, I am here.
oh, sorry about that, Teresa. Present.
It's okay, just got on.
And seat 16, Sarah Pyan.
Present.
And with that, we are all present and most certainly have a quorum, Madam Chair. So, Madam Chair, with that, we can move on to a review of the agenda. And Ray, if you're able to give me the privilege, I can share my screen and just pull up the agenda if that would be helpful for folks.
And Nina, you're on mute.
That would be super helpful. Thank you. Me unmuting would be super helpful too. Talk about virtual rules.
All yours, David.
Yeah.
Okay, are you able to see the, let me see. Yes, that looks like the right screen. Oh. Sorry about that. Pardon. Okay, there we go.
All right. So if the committee can just review the agenda. We'll do a minutes review. We have a presentation or an update from the Office of Cannabis. We have a presentation from the Office of Economic Workforce Development, a presentation from DBI, policy recommendations, and then a general public comment. Oh, sorry, policy recommendations, and then we have implementation recommendations, and then we have general public comment. Is there anything else that people can see that needs to be on the agenda?
Perhaps if someone can motion, we can go ahead and take a vote.
And actually, David, before you put it to a vote, remember public comment.
Oh, yes. Do any members of the public have comment on the agenda? Please press *3 to get put into the queue.
Thank you for that, Nikesh.
Do we have anything coming in, Ray?
Madam Chair, we see no participants waiting to speak.
Okay. So hearing no public comment on this item, does anybody want to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as written.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll run through the roster for a quick vote. Seat 8, Ali.
Aye.
Seat 9, Aaron.
Aye.
Seat 10, Jessica.
Aye.
Seat 11, Doug.
Aye.
Seat 12, Sean. Sean, can you unmute yourself? Sean? All right, so that might be an abstain until we hear from him. Seat 13, Nina.
Gorilla Goo. Gorilla Glue.
Sorry.
Seat 13, Nina.
Aye.
Seat 14, Jesse.
Aye.
Seat 15, Teresa.
Aye.
Seat 16, Sarah.
Aye.
Okay. It passes with, let's see, 7 yeas and 1 abstention.
All right. Thank you. Okay, so our next item of the agenda is to review over last meeting minutes. So if you guys can take a second, I know all of you got it. If there's anything that you guys feel was left out and needs to be included, please do. And also, whoever's eating, can you press mute on, like if you're not speaking, please press mute, because I know background noise carries on this. So yes, take a second, review those past meeting minutes. Can we make a correction on the cover page for the Oversight Committee meeting? It says, the one that I have in front of me says March 2nd,
So
but I,
Nina, we distributed the March 2nd minutes as well as the August
oh,
4th
is that why?
to the
Okay,
committee because we, in the agenda item 7, will be referencing the recommendations from that March meeting.
got you. Okay, that's why. Why do I have this in front of me right now?
Do folks have any revisions or additions that they would like to see in the minutes? So one thing I did want to note was that the recommendations, as captured, I'm scrolling to them now.
Right.
We did, for clarity purposes, just put in some blackouts and some strikeouts. So we just wanted to make sure that that there's particular focus on how those were documented.
Hold on 1 second.
So I'm pulling up on my screen. When you look at recommendation 1, you can see that we crossed out the word here and bracketed more specifically who we were referring to, as well, and recommendation 2 as well. So I just wanted to call that out. We want to be as accurate as possible when capturing the motion, but certainly want your input as we finalize the language.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Madam Chairman, I'm not hearing anything, so
Yeah.
perhaps as a sign that these are looking okay for now.
Okay. Yeah. Also, there's just a lot to look over between the two, so I just want to give people ample time. Teresa, did you have something?
I just wanted to make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Perfect. All right. Anybody want to second that?
So I think, Madam Chairman, we do want to just open it for public comment for a second.
Yeah, that's right. So, all right. Public comment. If anybody has anything to say on these minute notes, which are also downloadable on the Office of Cannabis website under meetings, please press *3 in order to get into the queue, and Ray will prompt you to speak.
And Madam Chair, this is the chair. Just to add a little bit more color there, the number to dial in if you would like to make a public comment is 1408-418-9388, and the access code is 146-042-2427.
There you go.
And you can also make a comment via the chat box, which is enabled right now as well.
So thank you for that, Nikesh. David just put it up on the screen. So if you guys didn't hear that or catch it, it's there in front of you as well.
And Madam Chairman, just a note about the minutes. If the committee certainly has feedback about the minutes, whether there is a desire for, I don't know, greater detail, less detail, like that can also be something that we don't even necessarily have to do now, but certainly we can, adapt the minutes as needed. In terms of the length, we do recommend that members try to review and highlight any issues with the minutes that they would like to see during the meeting, so that when we do open it up for revisions, that's really the time to be sharing any additions or revisions, as opposed to taking the time in that moment to review, because they are lengthy. So we do appreciate that fact.
Got it. Yeah, no, I think the detail in the minutes are essential for our records and for us to be able to go back, or members of the public to be able to get caught up to where we are in the next meeting. So I really do appreciate the detail that comes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
All right. Ray, no public comment. Anybody in the queue?
Madam Chair, as of now, there's no individual waiting for speaking.
Cool. So, Teresa, did you want to make that motion again?
Yes, I would like to motion to approve the minutes as written.
Perfect.
Second.
Thank you.
Was that, just for our minutes, was that seconded by, that sounded like Jessica?
Yes, Jessica Cry, seat 10.
Thank you. So we'll run through for a quick vote. Seat 8, Ali. How do you vote? Seat 9, Aaron.
Aye.
Seat 10, Jessica.
Aye.
Seat 11, Doug.
Aye.
Seat 12, Sean. Seat 12, Sean Richard.
Aye.
Great, thank you. Seat 13, David. Nina.
Aye.
Great. Seat 14, Jesse.
Aye.
Seat 15, Teresa.
Aye.
Seat 16, Sarah.
Aye.
Great. With that, we have a unanimous passage of approval for the August minutes.
Amazing. Okay, we're going to move on to item number 4, which is the Office of Cannabis update. We have a presentation and some discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is Nikesh here. Yulia, if you could put up the presentation, that would be great. Fantastic. Thank you, Yulia. So hi, everyone. My name is Nikesh Patel. I'm with the San Francisco Office of Cannabis. And today, the Office of Cannabis will be providing a brief presentation covering these 5 general topics. We will be moving through this quickly because we understand that it's a fairly packed agenda and we do want to ensure that there's ample time for discussion at the end. With that being said, the 5 major areas that the Office of Cannabis will cover will be grants and provide a brief update. Deputy Director Eugene Hilsman will cover this portion. There will be a brief legislative update, which I will cover. Director Rodriguez will go over our permitting by the numbers, sort of where the Office of Cannabis is at this point in time, and also provide highlights from recent OOC weekly communications. And then to wrap up the Office of Cannabis's update, I will provide a brief review of where we are with respect to the Cannabis Oversight Committee's meeting budget and the number of meetings that we can plan for moving forward. So with that being said, I pass it along to Deputy Director Hilsman.
Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Eugene Hilsman, Deputy Director, Office of Cannabis. One of the things that has happened recently is that we've made a significant amount of progress on the technical assistance contracts designed to support equity applicants. If you're still interested in applying for technical assistance, please visit our website. We've made some additional kind of materials available there, including the application. It's actually the first link in the resources section. So there's a link included in the presentation. But if you're interested in learning more about that process, we have made a lot of those materials available online. Some important dates to be aware of. So the RFP was issued last Wednesday on September 9th, which is the date that you see in the first kind of header. We had a bidders conference yesterday. There appeared to be a significant interest in the RFP. We had about 35 attendees who were present and asking a lot of really important questions. If you are interested in the presentation that was provided at that bidders conference yesterday, it will also be uploaded on the website that I mentioned, in addition to the recorded version of the presentation. As a reminder, those TA proposals are due on September 25th. So after we kind of work through the process of distributing technical assistance to contractors, one of the things that we're kind of working on currently is developing the process for direct equity grants. So currently we're building out website contact information, building out website content, building out application materials, and developing the actual contracts in partnership with our city partners. We are expecting those materials to be distributed late September, early October. Next slide. So as a reminder, the Office of Cannabis will not be reviewing these technical assistance proposals. We've been very fortunate to engage some of the members on the Oversight Committee. So thank you to everyone who's volunteered. This includes the Planning Department, the Entertainment Commission, the San Francisco Unified School District, and the San Francisco Department of Public Health. We're really appreciative of your participation and could not have done this without your support. So just wanted to say thank you. Next slide. Right, so here is an important reminder. One of the things that we wanted to make sure that we emphasize is that for the support that we're providing directly to equity applicants, this will kind of constitute a closed pool of eligibility. So only equity applicants who have applications in our system are going to be eligible for that direct assistance. We've talked about this previously in Oversight Committee meetings, but just wanted to make sure that that was clear for people who are interested in applying for that support. We are planning on having a grants conference later in the month or early in October. This will essentially be an opportunity to learn more about the process for receiving direct assistance from the OOC. So similar to the bidders conference that we had yesterday, in which we essentially provided some additional content and created an opportunity for people to ask questions directly to the office. We'll have a similar experience for people who are interested in directly applying for those funds. If you think you might have additional challenges, please let us know. We're obviously kind of here to answer any additional questions that you might have. In the meantime, we suggest that applicants familiarize themselves with the supplier portal, because all applicants will need to register in that database to access that money and support. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Nikesh.
Thank you, Deputy Director. So moving on to the next portion of the presentation, we wanted to provide a brief legislative update. As of 9/1, so earlier this month, legislation was introduced, proposed legislation was introduced to modify Prop D, which is the cannabis business tax, in a couple of key regards. The primary point to convey is that the proposed legislation seeks to delay the implementation of Prop D by a full year. Previously, it would have gone into effect January 1st, 2021, and the proposed legislation seeks to extend that timeline to the following year, January 1st, 2022. A couple of other key respects in which there are proposed changes relate to the cap regarding gross receipts. So the legislation proposes to expand the amount that is exempt from $500,000 to $1 million. In other words, what that means is that previously, under the old legislation, the exempt gross receipts would have been from $0 to $500,000. Now that cap has increased to $1 million. With respect to retail establishments, the gross receipts between $1 million and 1.5 would be taxed at 2.5% under the proposed legislation, which is consistent with the previous legislation, and anything over 1.5 would be taxed at 5%. For establishments outside of retail, the same would apply, except anything over 1 million but beneath 1.5 would be taxed at 1%, and anything over 1.5 million in gross receipts would be taxed at 1.5%. Those are the key proposed changes. And in terms of the status of the legislation, it was introduced 9/1 earlier this month, meaning that it's still in that 30-day period before it'll be assigned to a subcommittee. At the earliest, we expect a hearing will be scheduled sometime in early to mid-October, and we will be monitoring it as we do all legislation that comes before or that relates to the Office of Cannabis and cannabis generally speaking. So with that being said, if there are any questions, happy to answer them at the end of this presentation. For now, I will pass it along to Director Rodriguez.
Hello, everyone. Thank you. I really appreciate everyone continuing to lean in. Marissa Rodriguez, Office of Cannabis. Thought it would be nice to give an overview of where we are year to date. Where were we August of 2019 versus today, and a lot of great things to announce. Certainly the first thing being this time last year, we hadn't been able to issue any permits yet as we're continuing to build out the program and finalize those early applicants as they were making their way through our process. Happy to report as of August of this year, we have issued 10 equity cannabis business permits, which is an incredible feat. We're very excited about that. That was August. We have more coming down the pipeline. Another important point to note, applicants waiting for to be processed in Tier 1. Last year, around this time, we had 140 in the queue. That was our backlog that the controller's report indicated and that we would need assistance with. We're happy to say that we were able to lean in. It was a heavy lift, but the office and everyone on the team worked really hard to get us down to 0. We have made it through Tier 1, which is a great celebration. Moving on to Tier 2 now. So those in Tier 2 have been contacted by our office. We're making considerable progress in that area and looking forward to continuing down the tiers. This time last year, applicants were referred to the planning department. There were about 32 to date as far as August. We have about 104 more since then. So happy to see that people are moving through the process. Applicants in our in the build out phase, there were 11. As you can see, those 11 have been permitted. And now we have about 23 finishing up, getting whatever needs to be done in the final phases, going through the building department and finalizing the last bits of phase 2 of the application process and getting ready to be permitted. So this is going to be a very busy year for the Office of Cannabis, as is all years. Last year, this time we had about 298 verified equity applicants, and now we have closer to 340. So a lot of movement and a lot of progress. So one of the things that our office has done as we've pivoted in sort of this COVID space is to make sure that since we can't be one-on-one like we used to be, that we send out very regular communications to our pipeline. These communications are very important. We want to bring your attention to them, make sure you're receiving your emails from our office and that you're engaging in this process. One of the things that we're really proud of here in San Francisco is the free legal assistance opportunities that we provide to verified equity applicants. In fact, recently, Los Angeles County has also set up a similar program, realizing how important this is. So if you're a verified equity applicant and you're considering entering into any cannabis business, even if we haven't engaged your application, when, as you know, when we do, we get very involved in that process. But if you haven't started that process with our office, but you are engaging in entering into business dealings or anything like that, please avail yourself of this resource. It's an important one. Just reach out to Jeremy Schwartz from our office or Princess Bustos of the San Francisco Bar Association, and they'll assist you with support. Also wanted to flag the deferral of business fees for small businesses in San Francisco. Again, you can go to our website or you can call us to find out more details about that. Many of you were on the recent webinar where the City College announced a cannabis program. We're excited about that. They are seeking teachers. If you're interested in teaching a course, it's a paid opportunity in equity in the cannabis industry, or metric. If you have very strong familiarity with metric and you want to share your skills with the community here in San Francisco, they are seeking teachers. Just reach out to Blake Barker. Her information is here. You can also just email our office and we'll be happy to connect you. Next slide, please. We might have some technical difficulty. One moment. To keep us going, unfortunately, I don't have the slide deck. Oh, okay. Another issue that's come up, and it's not this here. Let's see. No, this is not it. But another issue I wanted to bring your attention to is fraud. Many businesses have reached out saying that people are posing as regulators. Here we go. And sending messages and trying to get information from our businesses. Please remain vigilant about these phishing attacks. If you suspect something strange, please bring it to our attention and we'll make sure to help others in our community know that this is happening. Next slide, please. We recently had a very successful meeting with our SFPD partners. A lot of great things came out of that meeting. One of them, of course, was creating a safety plan with your employees, creating clear protocols for managing public safety situations, especially when we have a heightened situation like we did with the protests recently. You want to get to know your San Francisco Police Department and your district stations, especially your captains. You want to get to know your beat officers. If you happen to have armed guards that are patrolling your storefronts, make sure that the police department knows who those people are. Establish relationships, invite beat officers in, invite even your captain to come see your establishments. Even if you're in the supply chain, not just outward facing and retail, make sure you get to know the police department so that they can have open lines of communication, keep your contact lists up to date. Who should the police department reach out to in case of an emergency? And we're going to continue to have these meetings throughout the year with the police department so that we can ensure we have good communication. And finally, 2020 census, just a reminder, make sure you get this information out to your communities. Fill out census information. We want to be counted. We want to make sure that San Francisco and our state gets everything that it needs around education, infrastructure, everything, representatives. It's really important. These things are important. Get the word out. For some, I mean, naturally, in light of COVID, it's lagging and we're not reaching the goals as a city, but we want to make sure that we do. So get that final push out there. We can't stress the importance of this enough. And lastly, I thought the other one was the last slide, but again, there's a stronger push now for COVID-19 safety guidelines and getting that out. You may have been approached by city representatives to remind you gently that you need to ensure you have all your social distancing protocols up to date and that you are implementing them. They're going to be a lot less kind around this. They're going to be a lot more assertive. And I don't want anyone to be on the wrong side of safety guidelines. Make sure that at your businesses that you're setting everything up correctly. You don't want to receive a citation or anything like that, but they are going to start ramping this up. And so I just want to make sure everyone is aware of that. If you have any questions, certainly reach out to our office and we will help you get the information that you need to be successful. Thank you.
With that, thank you, Director Rodriguez. And Yulia, if you could go back to slide, I believe it's the third to last slide, that would be great. And while you're queuing that up, I'll sort of just direct everyone's attention to the slides that we'll be talking about. So the next, what we wanted to conclude with is provide the Oversight Committee with a review of what's left with the budget and have a conversation around scheduling the next meeting, as it will be the last meeting that we're currently budgeted for. So with that being said, when we started at the beginning of this year, we had initially budgeted for 10 meetings. This was, of course, before COVID-19 and the switch from in-person meetings to virtual meetings. As the year progressed, we agreed to meet every other month, which totaled to a total of 7 meetings for the full year of 2019 to 2020. And we had initially agreed to not meet in August, as that's a time that most committees do take recess and city government is a little bit slower in general. With COVID-19 and shifting circumstances, we continued to meet in August. It was a much needed meeting given some of the delays that we had earlier, but we were still on track to meet the total number of meetings of 7 that we had allotted for the year. We're still on track there. One of the things that has happened as a result of COVID-19 and shifting from in-person to virtual meetings is that some of the costs associated with each of these meetings have increased, particularly the administrative costs of having mock meetings, of taking the time to make sure everyone is able to access the meeting, creating new sets of materials so public comment is readily available, and just making sure that we're making these meetings as accessible and as open as possible. So with that has come increased costs. And as a result, we are at the point where we are now, where we are on our 6th meeting. And Yulia, if you could click on the next slide, that'd be great. Right, we are on our 6th meeting, and the next meeting will be our 7th meeting. It'll be our last meeting of the year. So one of the questions that we'll pose to the committee is when to have that meeting with respect to the remaining months of the year. And finally, one of the things that we really wanted to showcase for the committee is that it has been an incredibly productive year. There have been a variety of different conversations. If you consider that over 7 meetings, the committee itself has already issued 4 legislative recommendations regarding legislative implementation, which we'll discuss later today. The committee has also voted on core recommendations for the equitable distribution of equity grant funds and helped the Office of Cannabis establish a grant program, which is amazing. The Oversight Committee has also successfully pivoted from in-person meetings to virtual meetings and responded to COVID-19 without skipping much of a beat, which has been great to keep the industry moving forward with the Oversight Committee's input. There have been trainings on labor regulations, which we'll have in a moment. The committee has also been a great platform for convening different city departments that touch cannabis and giving them an opportunity to speak. Today is a good example of just that. Earlier in the year, we've heard from the police department, so that's been a really awesome development to see and a central place to have those meetings. And finally, the committee has also issued a formal letter in response to legislation that was introduced earlier this year with respect to the pipeline of applications, of equity applications. So with all that being said, we look forward to wrapping up the year on a very strong note, but we're building on a lot of good work to date already, and would love to have the committee weigh in on when that next date of the Oversight Committee meeting should be. So with that, we're happy to answer questions. We covered 5 general topics. We'll turn it over to the committee now. Thanks so much.
You all from the Office of Cannabis and giving us that update, and also the rundown of what we've been successful on. It's always good. I know Marissa's always big on that, like focus on what we have done versus what we haven't done yet. So as far as our morale builder, thank you so much for letting us know what we have gotten done so far. But we do have a lot more to do. So we budgeted for 10. Is it like completely, we can't have more than that? Like, can we have 8 meetings? Is there any way that we can stretch an 8th meeting at all? Because there's a lot to talk about still.
And I'm happy to answer this question. Director, feel free to weigh in, but based on our review of the budget, there is only enough for 1 full meeting. And then the meeting will resume once the new fiscal year begins, which will be in 2021. So between now and the end of this year, there's enough for 1 meeting, but meetings will resume after that in accordance with our regular schedule. So to answer your question, there is only enough for 1 full meeting.
Okay. Follow-up question. You said 2021 fiscal year. Does that mean July fiscal year or like the start of January?
Right. And Ray, if you could weigh in on this, just so I'm not giving incorrect information. I believe it's for this calendar year, but Ray, feel free to jump in.
That is correct. So the new fiscal year for this particular contract is January 2021. So which means if we are planning to have 1 more meeting in November and we keep our meeting every other month, then we will be able to continue to have our meeting on a regular basis.
Okay, thank you for that. Jesse, did you have something?
Yes, I'm wondering if either RDA or the Office of Cannabis personnel on the call can explain what changed. I mean, you told us on December 17th that we had funds for up to 10 in-person meetings minus up to 3 RDA reports. And so far we've had 0 RDA reports. And as you just said, gotten a lot done in the meetings. So I would hope and expect we could have 2 more meetings to reach our quota of 10 rather than 1 more meeting since we're not asking for any reports.
And Jesse, I'm happy to jump in and sort of provide a little more context here. Essentially what happened is that we had budgeted a certain amount per meeting for in-person meetings. And while we were able to have in-person meetings, that amount was relatively accurate. Once we switched over to virtual meetings, the per cost of each meeting also increased. And so the initial calculation for each meeting was no longer accurate. As that has happened and as we've had multiple meetings virtually, those costs have added up. And that's why we have enough now for 1 full meeting with a little bit left over, but really only enough for 1 full meeting. So the short answer is that virtual meetings are more expensive than what we had initially allotted for the in-person meetings.
A half meeting still? Rakesh?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
So you said we have only enough for 1 full meeting, right? So that's a 3-hour meeting. Is there a way that we can have an hour-and-a-half meeting versus like after that one? Like, is it completely like, or is it, I'm just trying to get an idea of like how much would be left. Like I said, there's still a lot to discuss before the end of the year. So.
Sure, and we definitely understand the question. In terms of the amount for each meeting, there's only enough for 1 full meeting. There is a little bit left, but I would have a hard time sort of guessing how far that would get us. we sort of have come to a good understanding of how much each meeting costs at this point. But given how much that would be left, I'm not sure I could accurately say, that would be for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours.
And Madam Chair, if I may,
Yeah.
add one more point here. I believe the answer is not optimistic, only because for one meeting, we allot a fair amount of resources for preparation, right? Like scheduling the time, coordinating with different people to make sure the meeting is running smoothly. So those costs are fixed, no matter we have a 1 hour meeting or 3 hour full meeting, right? So I believe if we want to do another meeting, those costs will still be there and be a fixed cost for that.
Okay. Well, okay, Jamal. Sorry.
Ollie, can we just make the next meeting longer? To Dina's point, I agree. I don't think one meeting for 3 hours is going to accomplish also kind of the work that everyone did so far. We don't want to lose any of that. So, I'm happy to sit in an extra hour or two. If to your point, Ray, if certain costs are already the same, then it seems like going longer for an hour or two wouldn't kill the budget.
The reason why I'm harping on it too is because like at the end of this meeting, we have policy recommendations and we have implementation recommendations, which in those two items deserve their own meeting altogether, because there's so many different pieces of each of those items that we just really need ample time to get through all of them, because there's everything having to do with tax, with different with new permitting types. There's a lot in there.
And there's still a lot of problems the industry is addressing to people like Nina and me that we still have to consider. We need a little bit. We need more than 3 hours to do good legislative recommendations.
Correct.
And Ali, this is Nikesh. To your point, we can certainly have that conversation. We'll take a look and see I think it's a good idea. We'll take a look to see how much longer we could postpone that meeting, or not postpone, but extend the meeting. And then from there, probably set out a doodle poll just to see what people's appetite is and for how long they may be able to be for that next meeting. But that seems like something that would be viable. We just want to take a look at the budget and make sure that it's not an issue. But yes, totally hear you. And as far as next steps go, we'll take a look and then send out a doodle to see what people's availability is for a longer meeting if it's possible.
Okay, awesome.
And consider reaching out to legislators for more additional support to the Office of Cannabis Oversight Committee. Moving forward, we are in a very tight budget, and it is tough. And with budget cuts over the next 2 years, they're real, and it's meaning a lot more work for all of the departments and a lot less resources. So just keeping that in mind.
Got you.
And then also think about how you want to frame the next meeting, and maybe leaving more room to allow you guys to work together, discuss that sort of thing. I know it's really important to bring in different people to present. It is important because we do want to get information, but just kind of thinking about that for the next meeting. What do you need to get the work that you need to get done? What space do you need to share and discuss, kind of thing?
Right, because the last 6 meetings has been really about being able to understand the flow in which cannabis business has to interact with all parts, right? So we just got through pretty much the processing, right? And DBI is one of the last stops on the way, right? So, and then we have to actually discuss the issues of the cannabis industry itself, which we haven't been able to get to. So I just wanted to be clear on the intentionality of us moving through the oversight committee was definitely to understand the entire pipeline and what somebody would have to go through and what the process is for each department, so that we can try to troubleshoot any bottlenecks that are happening in each one. But then there's still actually the people, getting more understanding of looking forward and trying to preemptively attack issues that are coming up, So that's just my thought process behind it. But I don't want to hold up any more time on this agenda item. Does anybody else on the committee itself, before I open up public comment, have questions for the Office of Cannabis? Jesse? You are unmuted, so I thought you had something.
I don't have a question, just a comment. I wonder if we can later, outside of this forum, consider the possibility of having Office of Cannabis personnel fill in for RDA's role to enable our meeting budget to stretch farther. But we can talk about it another time.
Okay, well, we'll add that somewhere. Thank you so much. It'll be recorded in the notes for sure. Okay. Public. So opening up for public comment on the Office of Cannabis presentation. The phone number again is 408-418-9388. The access code is 146-043-2427. And then press *3 to put yourself in the queue.
I would just add that the chat box is also enabled. So if anyone would like to type in their comment, that's also an option.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nikesh and Madam Chair. As of now, we have no individual waiting to speak, but I will give it another minute.
Thank you.
And this is Eugene Hilsman, Deputy Director, Office of Cannabis. I would just remind people, if they have additional questions for the Office of Cannabis, this is not the only opportunity to kind of direct those to us. And so feel free to reach out to us collectively or individually.
Thank you. Ray, how are we looking over there in the queue?
Madam Chair, as of now, there's no individual waiting to speak. I believe we can proceed.
Okay, hearing no public comment, we're moving on to the next agenda item, which is a presentation from the Office of Economic Workforce Development.
Madam Chair, thank you so much. This presentation will be provided by Joshua Arce of the Office of Economic Workforce Development. Before Josh speaks, Director Rodriguez will just provide some very brief introductory remarks.
Thank you so much. So as more businesses are coming online, the importance of understanding labor regulations is super critical. It was really important that we had this opportunity. It's why we've asked that the Office of Cannabis has reached out to our pipeline, to everyone in the community to please be present today, because this is a very important presentation from the Office of Economic and Workforce Development. They are tasked with implementing labor regulations related to cannabis business permitting. We work, as you know, with planning, with DBI, with fire, with the police department. We also work really closely with the Office of Economic and Workforce Development. They assist us with labor peace agreements, first hiring, cannabis apprenticeship program, the Office of Labor Standards Enforcement Policies. There are a lot of things that we work closely with, together with them. If you have any questions, always feel free to reach out to Josh Arce and his team of professionals who are working in this space, very passionate about this work, and we appreciate that. We don't want folks to find themselves on the wrong side of compliance in this space. Very important. I know that not everybody has come through our framework here at the Office of Cannabis, Article 16. Our 10 permits have, but everyone else is still waiting. This doesn't mean that this work does not apply to you. It also applies to you. There are other authorities who have an interest in enforcing regulations, either on the state level or federally, and everyone is accountable for those. So we want you to lean in, to listen closely. If there are any rumblings in your businesses, if there's anything that's happening and you're kind of wondering, am I getting this right? Please feel free to reach out to us, talk to us. We're a resource to you. And that's important. So without taking any more time, because I do want to give Josh an opportunity to present this important information, Josh Arce from the Office of Economic Workforce Development. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Rodriguez. Am I coming through okay, Chair Parks and committee members? Thank you. Thank you once again. It's great to see all of you, and thank you all for your work on this different things that you do in this critical industry, and particularly advancing equity in everything that we do here in this work. So my name is Joshua Arce, as Director Rodriguez had said, and I'm the Director of Workforce Development in the Office of Economic and Workforce Development under the leadership of our Department Director, Joaquin Torres, and the direction of Mayor London Breed. I will present something that I think hopefully everyone finds very useful and informative. I have to share that you're going to see a lot of information. It's going to be a lot. We've budgeted about 15-20 minutes of information. And then, of course, we want to leave ample time for questions and comments. I know it's very important to the Office of Cannabis, and particularly to Supervisor Sandra Lee Fewer, who was the leader of establishing this committee, that we really provide the context and the framework for the labor policies and regulations and workforce development programs that are part of this way that we do this in San Francisco with respect to cannabis. Is we lead by equity. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to share these slides. Is this working out okay for everyone? Slides is Sharon?
Yep, it's Sharon.
All right, thank you again. Thank you, Chair Parks, and to the committee. I'm going to go through, and if I may, I'll defer to you, Chair Parks. If you do want me to stop at any moment, I would like to kind of pace through, and we can go back at any time. If you see something critical in your termination as chair, please stop me at any time, but I'll just keep going full steam ahead and present this information, and then make sure we got enough time for questions from you, the committee, and the public.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair Parks. So again, our Office of Economic and Workforce Development, we coordinate the city's workforce development system, which, as you see here, is around this partnership to help recruit, train, and retain a diverse local workforce. Our workforce division right now, during the COVID era, the COVID response, is really focused in so many ways on supporting unemployed San Franciscans, addressing persistent employment inequities, and preparing to emerge from the COVID pandemic even stronger. We're overseen by a workforce board that's a coalition and stakeholders from the labor community, from the business community, from community and other government agencies. We partner with the Office of Cannabis to implement the labor regulations that we're going to talk about here. As we see, Mayor Breed has us very focused as an agency and an institution on connecting workers who've been laid off, those vulnerable community members at risk of being left behind. We're already being left behind before COVID, and even more so, but our focus is on upward mobility and protecting worker safety rather during this time. Do want to also give a shout out and recognize that it was an important body of work of Supervisor Fewer to propose this committee. She noted that with the legalization of cannabis, there's an opportunity to grow this industry in a way that benefits all of our communities. And we can do this by giving industry experts and key stakeholders a seat at the decision-making table. It is an honor for me to present to this table today. One of the things I think that was important for us in this conversation, when we think about labor regulations and workforce development and equity, the nexus of all these things in many ways is this clause here. If my little arrow is going, I don't know or not, but in the second kind of piece of principles, facilitating socially responsible growth of the cannabis industry by creating living wage jobs and economic opportunities consistent with the board's intent, reversing past wrongs, making right the incorrect and unjust outcomes of the failed war on drugs. So the topics today is going to be around these core components of policies that are in place within the labor regulations of cannabis, as well as particularly workforce development. It's labor peace agreements, that's the first source hiring program, cannabis apprenticeship ordinance, as well as policies that are implemented citywide across industries by our partners at the Office of Labor Standards Enforcement. With that, we're going to go right into it. And again, I'll go through. We've budgeted about 15 to 20 minutes of presentation and then plenty of time for questions, we hope. Labor peace agreement. So we talked about, really want to note that Director Rodriguez mentioned that the bulk of permitted stakeholders and license holders is going to be under the Article 33 framework as we transition to Article 16. Director Rodriguez, did I hear correctly that the number is 10 Article 16 permitted employers?
That's correct. Yes, that's correct.
Got it. So while the policies we're going to talk about now are pertinent to the Article 16 permit holders, the expectation, I understand, is over the next year to year and a half that everyone with an Article 33 permit will be in the world of Article 16 And that's where these applicant requirements are going to apply to everyone. So now's a good time to get up to speed. And if you are watching or you're seeing this today or when it's made available to the public, this is a kind of refresher for those who are in that 10. And for those who are on their way, this is something good for you to know. In fact, it's critical because these are laws. So the thing is around the first thing I want to talk about again is the labor peace agreement. It says that for applicants with 10 or more employees, as a condition to getting your permit prior to the award of permit, the applicant will enter into and agree to enter into a labor peace agreement or a collective bargaining agreement with a bona fide labor organization. Just to go through that again with clarity. Before you get a permit, an applicant must agree to enter into either a labor peace agreement or collective bargaining agreement and to abide by that policy. What are these agreements is what we're going to talk about here. Definition of a labor peace agreement is found, again, you'll see the citations to these different code sections so you can reference and have these, and these slides will be made available to the committee and to the public. It's an agreement between an applicant and any bona fide labor organization. That's what a labor peace agreement is. What are its elements? It prohibits engaging in picketing, work stoppages, boycotts, and any other economic interference with an applicant's business. An applicant agrees not to disrupt efforts on the other hand, with respect to the applicant's commitments, an applicant agrees not to disrupt efforts by such bona fide labor organization to communicate with and attempt to organize and represent the applicant employees. Some of these activities that you would see, obviously, I think for the common knowledge, you would think about what a picket looks like, what a work stoppage or boycott, economic interference. The language here around disrupting efforts could be deemed as anything that would negatively seek to influence, particularly with respect to using coercion or an employer that might consider to make statements that would be false or misleading or any other kind of coercive methodology to discourage or in this terminology here, disrupt effort to organize and represent the applicant's employees. Colleagues and as well as committee members, these two elements here are really the most important kernel of what labor peace looks like in terms of the law. The next element of labor peace agreement, there's two more, and then we're going to talk about a key point of this provision and this policy, which is bona fide labor organization. So the other two things that are important to know about a labor peace agreement is that the applicant agrees to provide access at reasonable times to areas in which the applicant's employees work for the purpose of meeting with employees to discuss their right to representation, employment rights, and terms and conditions of their employment. And lastly, a labor peace agreement under the local police code here and our office, a designated authority here to review and to make decisions and recommendations back to the Office of Cannabis is that a labor peace agreement shall not mandate a particular method of election or certification. For example, it may a labor peace agreement cannot rely on a National Labor Relations Board election process because that would be mandating a particular method of election or certification. A lot of times what we see in a labor peace agreement is the use of card check recognition, which is an agreement that an employer recognizes the will of employees to be recognized by a demonstration of 50% plus one of the employees indicating their desire to be represented on a signed card. People have been asking since we first started playing this role for the Office of Cannabis in partnership and started to see the first Article 16 permit holders, what is a bona fide labor organization? And the Board of Supervisors established what that means and gives us guidance. It's an organization or any agency or employee representation committee or any local unit thereof in which, and you'll notice the underlying elements are kind of what we called out as key things to call attention to, in which employees participate. It's an organization in which employees participate and that exists for the purpose in whole or in part of dealing with employers concerning with grievances, labor disputes, wages, hours of employment or conditions of work. Also, a bona fide labor organization must not be found to be or to have been financed in whole or in part, interfered with, dominated, or controlled by the employer or any employer association. As a matter of rulemaking and policy within our office, the way that we look to determine that first consideration of whether or not an organization is a bona fide labor organization, and you too can do this if you're an applicant or you are anyone seeking to make your own kind of review of what organizations may be bona fide or not, you can go to sflaborcouncil.org. That is the website of the San Francisco Labor Council. Central labor councils are units recognized by federal and state law of broader national organizations, and it's a good barometer for us that we use. The first place we look to is this link here that says affiliates, to see if the organization on a proposed agreement is on that list or not. And if that organization is on that list, for us, that meets the criterion of bona fide labor organization. Again, I realize we might have questions. Believe it or not, we're halfway through the slides and we can come back at as much time as you'd like to take for questions. What are the activities that are discussed? Well, we talked about it on that first slide. No picketing, work stoppages, boycotts. Those are commitments by the bona fide labor organization. The applicant makes commitments to no disruption of efforts to communicate with and attempt to organize and represent employees. And then we talked about access at reasonable times to meet with employees and discuss right to representation, employment rights, and terms and conditions. It's also suffice to say this is not a law that we implement or that we make decisions upon, but it does add another element to what is discussed here with respect to labor peace agreement activities. The National Labor Relations Act is a federal law enacted in 1935 for these stated reasons. This is directly from the National Labor Relations Board, who does oversee and make decisions with respect to this policy. It exists to protect the rights of employees and employers, to encourage collective bargaining, and curtail certain private sector labor and management practices that can harm the general welfare of workers, businesses, and the U.S. economy. And then again, further to conduct of parties with respect to these agreements, which we would call labor peace. This is another set of guidelines here from federal law. Generally speaking, whether or not there's a labor peace agreement or not, these policies and laws exist. Again, irrespective of a labor peace agreement, and that's a prohibition against employers from interfering with, restraining, or coercing employees in the exercise of rights relating to organizing, forming, joining, or assisting a labor organization for collective bargaining purposes, or from working together to improve terms and conditions of employment, or refraining from that activity. So the key distinction there is this federal law talks about interfering, restraining, or coercing. When we have a labor peace agreement in place in the city and county, recall the word is disruption. So that's another level of analysis. This is where we have discretion and authority here in making recommendations to implementation and this idea of applicants abiding by this policy. What we look at is this question of disruption here locally in our work with Office of Cannabis. What are the penalties, the potential penalties? These are language that's drawn from some labor peace agreements that we have seen. We have to date been presented with 2. We've been presented with 3. We've rejected 1 and approved 2. And so the language that we see, again, there's no template. These are agreements. So it's a conversation between different parties. But what we've seen in terms of the sample terms for penalties, we see that there's a resolution process. There's a process by which one party or the other can say, hey, we feel that one party or the other is not abiding by the terms of this agreement. There's typically a referral to an arbitration process. And then there's typically remedies. We've seen monetary, injunctive, and declaratory relief. We've also seen which are on injunctive relief, attorney's fees, actual damages, specific performance, liquidated damages. That's within the construct of the agreement, and that's something that the city would allow to take place between the parties. However, Director Rodriguez, in her capacity and role as the director of the Office of Cannabis, has 3 other capabilities under Article 16. That's a notice of violation. If the director determines a cannabis business is operated in violation of this article, there's potential for a notice of violation. That would lead to a process by which the second potential action that could be available would be an administrative penalty by order of the director not to exceed $1,000 for each violation, for each day such violation occurs. And then there is additional steps and procedures to which there is at least a contemplation of suspension and revocation. Of course, there's due process for all parties for whether an employer or a labor organization is alleged to be not in the compliance of these rules and regulations. That's more pertinent to this dual labor peace agreement, because that's a party between the applicant and the bona fide labor organization. The analysis here would be most likely with respect to the permit holder. And again, there's a due process, a procedure in place to make sure that all rights and considerations are respected, and that there's a chance to be heard out in this process. But once again, these are laws that we enforce, and these are laws that we all take seriously in terms of advancing the big picture goals and objectives for this industry. The equity program is what drives it. And that's because the Office of Cannabis Director shall implement an equity program designed to foster equitable access to participation in this industry, including equitable access to promotional and ownership opportunities. It's language within the, again, Police Code Section 1604 about full and equal access to resources and opportunities. We're looking for strategies to uplift communities. One of the things that's really important, especially because when we talk about equity, we're talking about those individuals in communities unfairly burdened by the war on drugs, individuals who've experienced social indicators that exacerbate inequities. And so in that instance, we're on to our discussion of the First Source hiring program, which a lot of you are familiar with, which is one way to look at it is it's a local hiring program that helps to advance the equity workforce development goals of this policy. The reference is in the Police Code 1618G, but First Source hiring is a policy and a program that applies to employers across industries, in city contracts, and many other licensing situations, and also tenants, in many cases, major tenants and employers in buildings that were built under variances and preferential decision-making at the Planning Commission. But why is this important? And in a second, I'll make sure that we want to make sure you all have the contact to the lead really hardworking leaders within our department who can help and walk you through these questions you might have about this policy and others. But really, First Source hiring agreements have three areas: hiring and retention goals for entry-level positions. There's First Source interviewing, recruitment, and hiring requirements, in which referrals through this system, candidates refer to this system, which is a partnership with community-based organizations, that the first opportunity for employment goes to qualified economically disadvantaged individuals. And of course, this is a good faith-based policy, and there's guidelines for employer good faith efforts to comply. But once again, just as we mentioned on the previous slide, it is a requirement that every cannabis business enter in one of these agreements with our office. And again, this is another thing that we do in terms of your checklist of making sure you're all ready to go to get your permit. I'm really excited to share something that I think reflects the commitment of employers who've really heard us out on First Source hiring, and certainly with labor organizations who've stepped up to help community, the identification of these workers, equity candidates in our most disadvantaged communities, most negatively impacted by the failed war on drugs. And that's something that we said with Director Rodriguez, myself, and others, that policymakers, we want this industry to be successful. That's clear from the mayor, from the board, from all of us. There's also, I think, certainly the business case that's been made by leaders and by advocacy organizations and umbrellas about really trying to help do the things that have been requested by industry to help for the industry to really make this important leap forward into the legalization era and to be successful. And we often said that one thing that you could really do, apart from the partnerships around labor peace agreements and First Source hiring, and we'll talk about apprenticeship, is, really participate in this program. It's good faith based. We've got capable, very capable staff dedicated to this program. Lowell Rice, our First Source hiring program manager, his email's here. Lauren Acevedo, a lot of people know Lauren. She's our First Source hiring program cannabis specialist. Her email is here. We're here to help make this successful. And when you have policymakers saying, well, we're having a conversation about taxation within this industry, or we're having conversation about business policies that could help the industry really grow and to thrive, and especially in this COVID era, you want us to be able to say that there's a lot of participation among employers, and more importantly, there's a lot of first source hiring placements. And we've been in front of you, a lot of you and other employers, to make that case over the past year, and we're seeing that happen now. You saw that in the previous first 2 years of this program, 43 total first source placements. That's the light green line there. And in this last year, even despite COVID, the numbers would have been even higher but for COVID. But imagine that the first 9 months of the year, plus work we've done together in COVID, the first source employers, first source obligated employers, cannabis employers have hired 42 first source candidates for these entry-level positions. That's nearly as many hires as the first 2 years combined. That's really a good look, and I really do want to give a shout out. Really, one of the partners really driving this was the first Article 16 permit holder, Burners on Hate. In some sense, that may not be a mystery. One of the partners there is one of the longtime job developers, Sean Richard. He really knows workforce, worked with Success Center in our office to really hire a large number of the 42 hires come from that particular applicant, but there's at least 10 or 11 other companies that are represented at 42. So we're here to help you do more, and that's something you want the supervisors to hear, you want the mayor to hear, the public, that you're really doing everything you can to advance these workforce objectives. Everything that we've talked to now, especially around this first source hiring, because we do provide these reports publicly now. And we're in the home stretch here. Just a couple of slides. The Cannabis Apprenticeship Ordinance was adopted, I want to say about 1.5 years ago, as an approach to encourage the existence of a stable, well-trained workforce in the cannabis industry, learning from some of the lessons learned of our landmark City Build Academy program in the construction industry. Supervisor Asha Safai proposed to expand that approach, cannabis apprenticeship, in the world of cannabis. He called it City Grow as a pilot name, and this is a policy that if certified, and we'll talk about what certified means, if a apprenticeship program and pre-apprenticeship pathway into the industry is certified, it means that cannabis businesses shall ensure that at least 35% of new hires are registered apprentices enrolled in a relevant apprenticeship program approved by the state. This policy is on the books, and there is certified apprenticeship programs at the state and other proposals in the works. But this is not a law yet that we implement, and that's simply because there's a second requirement that our office certify a pre-apprenticeship pathway into that apprenticeship. This law, as we mentioned, does not go into effect until our office certifies, you see here, certified by the city, until our office certifies a pre-apprenticeship pathway into state registered apprentice. All these other policies are in place. First source, you all know there's a local hire overall objective and all these other policies. But if we do certify a pre-apprenticeship pathway that is right there connected to a state certified apprenticeship program, has the right support that we need from employers to make this work, then we're prepared to certify that program in partnership with the Office of Cannabis. And it has to be in partnership with one or more community-based organizations, but that just hasn't happened yet. You can get, lastly, the Office of Labor Standards Enforcement policies are on their website, sfgov.org/OLSE. Here we kind of cite the goals and objectives with respect to OLSE's role in worker protections generally. Minimum wage, not all of these policies are necessarily applicable to cannabis. There's not a prevailing wage the way there is for construction, non-construction, driving positions, for example, or non-construction positions with a prevailing wage here in city and county. Minimum compensation and others are applicable. And again, those are implemented through our partners who work really hard and do great work in working to support workers and work with employers, make sure everything goes forward at OLSE. We're here to help. That's our website. We also have a San Francisco workforce hotline that's open typically 8 to 5, sometimes as late as 6. Heck, some people have taken shots in the dark and reached our staff as late as 10 at night. But just give us a call is the whole point. We've taken 8,500 calls to date since COVID began. That's our phone number. You press 1 for workers, 2 for employers. You can get all kinds of information. And if folks on the hotline from our staff, it's led by Chad Houston, one of our workforce specialists and folks from Human Services Agency and OED will get you the answers that you need. And with that, I pause and I stop and unshare if I can and turn it back to you, Chair Parks.
Thank you so much, Josh Arce, for that really great rundown of what the accountability is on all sides in regards to labor, as well as about the apprenticeship program. We have a technical assistance program coming and rolling out, and people are going to be able to start to provide that more thoughtfully and resourced for the cannabis industry. So there actually might be some programs to approve. Quick question: is there additional funds to help to provide the apprenticeship pathway? So let's say, for instance, if Success Center wins the contract, because I know that we've discussed as far as apprenticeship that there can be some funds to pay to learn, right? Does OEWD have that for folks to help to implement?
Thank you, Chair Parks. We don't today, but I do want to thank you because you've really helped to bridge that world, knowing employers seeking to advance the industry and workers seeking to get in, all within the equity framework. So I just want to say that out the gate. But the resources aren't available today, but they could be. We're going to be going into request for proposals in the first of the year for all of our workforce programs. Our entire budget will be going out to bid in January with new contracts and programs for July 1st, 2021, unless something changes, but that's our plan. And in addition, Mayor Breed and Supervisor Walton, if you read the Examiner this morning, you might have seen a story that in funding $120 million that's been reappropriated from law enforcement into programming that advances Black equity in a number of different ways for Black San Francisco. These are resources that we've been charged with $21 million this year and $21 million next year to take direction from community leaders. We're focused on the Black unemployment inequity, which says that despite some gains with respect to unemployment in the Black community over recent years, it's still the fact that 2 to 3 times higher unemployment exists in Black San Francisco compared to the average citywide. So that's something that we look at, waiting community direction. In fact, there's a community process. So I think that community members, this is about community-based self-determination. There was the second of 4 meetings today, and I can share with you, Chair Parks, and anyone who wants to join that conversation with Human Rights Commission Director Cheryl Davis. We'll gather all the community's recommendations with respect to how we advance Black employment equity in a variety of ways. We are just sitting waiting back to hear the community's direction there, generally speaking. So that's some additional resources, but also apart from that, with respect to disadvantaged San Franciscans or with respect to San Franciscans citywide, we may see some additional resources. But just to be very clear from that process, those are resources particularly to advance Black employment equity because of that particular disparity that still remains, which is nearly triple unemployment for Black San Franciscans compared to citywide average. There's considerably, I think it's not lost on anyone here, there's a correlation with the failures of the war on drugs, which we would believe is right there in their achievement gap, and also just some of the systems that we continue to have systemic racism across this country, even here in San Francisco. So we know there's a lot of work to be done, and that's just a start.
Right. And so with the equity program and it as an economic development program, for the city of San Francisco in regards to people that were harmed by the war on drugs, if we can get you to send a link to how to get signed up to those meetings that they're taking input, and maybe send it out to the Office of Cannabis so they can put it in their industry updates, that would be wonderful for us to just stay on the same page and get looped in and be at the right tables for conversation moving forward, because the equity program is one of the very first to really intentionally address the harms that were created by the war on drugs. So thank you. I'm going to open up the floor to the rest of the committee, and then we'll take public comment. Any committee members with questions for Josh?
I have a question. So I know that right now it said, or in the presentation, that the requirement for labor peace is 10 people. Is that everyone, or is that just equity people, or is that just new shops? Or like, where's the divide between what the requirement is for new incoming shops and what it was for people that are grandfathered in, say?
I can, thank you, Member Cry, and I can provide a quick answer and then turn it to Director Rodriguez. From our perspective, we would expect to see a file referred to us from an applicant for an Article 16 permit who's indicated that they plan to employ 10 or more workers. And if that's the case, we'll start that analysis. Director Rodriguez, did I describe the flow correctly?
Yeah, that's correct. So this is the Article 16 framework, and anyone that comes through our process will be held to these standards.
Can I ask questions, please? Well, thank you for your presentation. We enjoy working with your office very much in other industries. A few questions. So, of the, how many licensees do we have right now in San Francisco, and how many of them have LPAs? Do we have those numbers?
Director Rodriguez, would you like to, I can speak to the number of agreements we've reviewed, but you would have the numbers for the overall and the LPA qualified, Director Rodriguez?
Sure. Yeah, go ahead. Oh, did you?
So I think among the 10 applicants, we've seen 2 applicants referred to us with respect to an indication that they plan to hire 10 or more employees. So as I mentioned earlier, we saw an initial labor peace agreement with respect to one applicant that did not meet the criterion. Criterion is single. Did not meet the criteria, plural, for labor peace agreement. We saw a second that we did approve, and then we recently saw another applicant who met the requirement of or triggered the LPA requirement, indicating they plan to employ 10 or more. And in that instance, we received another labor peace agreement, did the analysis, and approved that as well. But to date, our office, like I said, has seen 3 different agreements proposed with respect to 2 different applicants among the 10, unless there's one or more applicants in the queue that's coming our way from the Office of Cannabis.
Yeah, there should be more coming down the pipe, but on that note, just the existing industry is not held to this standard as of yet. When they get processed through our office, then you will start to see more. And remember this, that it's a 10 or more. So the reason others haven't is because they're smaller operations.
Yeah. And one more question, and then I'll shut up for a minute, but I would like to speak to this in a little while, but give other people the chance. So how many other industries or sectors in the county of San Francisco have some sort of requirements for labor harmony in one form or another, similar to cannabis, that you're aware of?
Yes, thank you, Member Block. So I am aware of one of the early labor peace agreements is at the San Francisco airport. And so that is hospitality workers and retail workers working in employers in those segments of those industries would have a labor peace agreement attached there. That is to say, those seeking to rent space from SFO have an ordinance that requires and obligates. In that case, it's card check neutrality, but similar elements with respect to labor peace at the airport, hospitality, retail. I believe there are some additional policies with respect to tenants on the waterfront, irrespective of industry, that there are certain leases around the waterfront. It may be through one of the other departments. And in fact, I'm happy to double check on that because I believe it was a kind of evolution of the SFO labor peace approach that is written into, again, irrespective of industry, it's tenants in certain spaces along the waterfront. We then started to see labor peace policies with respect to the city's commuter shuttle program, as far as a policy at the MTA that applicants for commuter shuttles going back five years or so ago would need to present a plan for labor peace agreement in that instance. And we do see some other transportation policies there too. We see a policy with respect to scooters through a policy and urging resolution from the Board of Supervisors last year. And so that would be another industry that comes to mind. And then of course, cannabis licensing is an industry where it's baked into ordinance. So just to kind of summarize, I would say in San Francisco in various ways, depending on location and department and certain elements, we see labor peace written into the hospitality industry. We see it with respect to some retail and some transportation and cannabis. Suffice it to say, these agreements can also exist privately. They can be privately negotiated outside of any kind of city urging resolution or ordinance. We see it with respect to most hotels. We'll see hotels that are built with a kind of privately negotiated labor peace agreement with respect to the employer operator and labor organizations, but that's, you know, outside of the kind of city construct. It's a privately negotiated, but of course, by no means would I seek to project this as in any way a limitation of the industries where we might see labor peace. And in construction, we have, for example, public works construction, there's a requirement of it's a citywide project labor agreement policy. So there's actually not just labor peace agreements in a lot of our publicly funded construction, but there's actually even more developed agreements about how employers and labor organizations through the Building Trades Council work together. That's another industry, construction, where we see a similar kind of goals and objectives.
Great.
Thank you both for a detailed update. Is there any other comments or questions from our committee members before I open up public comment?
I have one last question.
Yes.
So when workers come together and decide to organize and they're facing some like intense anti-union behavior, such as like individual interviews and things of that nature, and being pressured to give more information or threatened, is this something that would come by the OEWD office, the OOC, or where would these workers go to seek help while they try to organize and are facing backlash?
Yes, thank you, Member Cry. And this is a conversation we've had with Supervisor Fuhrer and Ian Fregosi, and in her office as well has kind of asked us for some of our thoughts. And I think what Director Rodriguez and I have talked about is that for labor peace agreements that are in place because of the state regulations, which is with respect to 20 or more employees, and which is with respect to mostly the Article 33 permit holders, neither Office of Cannabis nor OEWD delegated authority through Office of Cannabis. Neither one of us has authority to act with respect to a state required labor peace agreement. It's only with respect to the local requirement. So there's other, we mentioned the state may have its own guidelines. We talked about guidelines that employers are going to definitely want to make sure of. Employers and labor organizations be well served to know very well the kind of guidelines from the National Labor Relations Act outside of Article 16. But certainly once we get into Article 16 territory, a permit holder who proposes to receive a permit or who has a permit, I want to kind of pause and make sure that I respond in line of Director Rodriguez's expectations. But my hunch is that we would both want to know if one party or the other has feedback with respect to an existing agreement or workers. I think we're here to help, again, to as best we can use some of the powers that are here to help to troubleshoot that instance. So I want to turn it over to you, Director Rodriguez, just to make sure that that's the way that you see fit. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. No, I appreciate that. That's absolutely right. Yeah, and so with respect to those that come under the Office of Cannabis in Article 16, Josh Arce was very clear in his presentation, sort of what penalties can be levied. And of course, certainly we would approach it with a more holistic approach initially. I mean, we obviously want to work with our community partners, that means you as well, wanting to ensure that we are coming to this together and finding out and seeking, seeking as much information as possible so that we can work with our community That's certainly the approach we want to take, but definitely it is very clearly outlined in Article 16, which is why we thought it was very important to have this presentation today. We don't want people to feel that they don't have an understanding of these tools and these laws. If you have, watched this presentation and you have questions for those, tuning in today, and you want to do follow up with our office, follow up with OEWD and Josh's team. It's super important. Again, as I said in the beginning of the presentation, I don't want you to find yourself on the wrong side of compliance in this space, especially since there are so many tools and resources to ensure that you can be compliant and that you can work with our office and work with the Office of Economic and Workforce Development to ensure that you are compliant. We actually, just to say, made phone calls to make sure that our community was present on this call for this presentation. That's how important we think this is.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Director Arce, for an incredible presentation. I appreciate that. I know a lot of work went into that. And so it's really, we really value that. And I know it's time for a public comment, so you're going to have to stay in the hot seat for just a little bit longer. But thank you.
Right. Thank you. All right. Any last comments from the committee?
Sure, Director Arce, I don't understand the first answer you gave explaining how the rollout of the certification of the pre-apprentice pathway. You were saying that it's not available until training goes out in January, I think you said, and I just can't understand how has it taken so long, or what is the city obstacle to certifying pre-apprenticeship programs that have already been certified by the state government?
I'm going to, thank you, Member Stout. I'm going to try to reshare, if I may. It looks like I can reshare. Are my slides back up? Slides are back up, Chair Parks? Yeah. Okay, so, and I apologize. I had my one eye, I had an eye on time, trying to make sure to leave enough time for questions that this is definitely worth a little bit more discussion. So we believe strongly in apprenticeship. Mayor Breed has apprenticeship goals in industries beyond construction. She set a goal of apprentices in our CCSF apprenticeship program. She has hopes that her City Drive partnership, which is a community labor partnership to train commercial drivers and bus drivers, will become an apprenticeship approach potentially. The governor of California, in fact, has the goal that we're going to see 500,000 new apprentices between 2019 and 2029. So apprenticeship is really a tried and true way to try to get men and women into a job training while earning while they learn. That being said, we talked about in this first paragraph, this is the goals of why we have an apprenticeship ordinance. And in this section here talks about what happens if the apprenticeship ordinance shall be in effect by the certification of a training program that leads to apprenticeship, thus requiring the businesses to hire in that industry. The reason it's not in effect is it's actually a pretty labor intensive process. It's a very intensive process in so many ways to make sure that this actually works. So we've had conversations. I need 4 hands probably to talk about the number of conversations we've had with individual employers. What does apprenticeship mean to you? We've had support from independent folks to kind of help us really learn how we can really take this next step to move apprenticeship as a tool in this industry. And from our perspective, to be quite honest with you, we're not there yet. We're not there yet in the sense of knowing exactly what the kind of apprenticeship pathway is going to be. We do know that there's some great training programs who are providing some job readiness around. Cannabis Success Center is a great partner, but we have not yet, to be totally honest with you, I say this even as someone who really believes in apprenticeship, we haven't yet seen the apprenticeship pathway really take life yet, whether that's in the cultivation of cannabis, the manufacturing, the distribution, or the retail. We hear lots of great ideas around apprenticeship, but for apprenticeship to be something that we're going to activate this law in partnership with Director Rodriguez, that all of a sudden there's a new component, right? The employers on this call, I can just read your mind saying, oh my gosh, so wait, there's another, how many more slides are you gonna have, Mr. Arce? The point is, before we get to that point, apprenticeship has to be like so developed to the point that not only is there an apprenticeship pathway, and apprenticeship really more than anything requires, it's a set of hours, it's a curriculum, it's a commitment that someone can step their foot in the door and make this much and can earn more as they learn. For us, we need to know that there's an equitable pathway. The law says there must be one or more community-based organizations who are connected through a memorandum of understanding whereby that we know graduates of a pre-apprenticeship, which is kind of like a pre-training program, have the ability to get into the apprenticeship and go to work with employers. The fact that it took me this long to explain it is just another big clue to you that we're not yet ready to certify any programs. So as of right now, this is an idea we're excited about. It's a law in the books, but it's not in effect because we haven't certified a pre-apprenticeship program pathway to meet these standards.
All right, thank you for that. Because of time, we have to move on to public comment. So, all right, members of the public, please call in. The phone number is 408. Oh, dang it. So many windows open. 408-418-9388. The access code, once again, is 14604322427, and then you press *3. Ray, do we have anybody in public comment?
Madam Chair, I do see one public comment submitted in written form, but before we get to that, if there is anyone waiting in the line. Madam Chair, as of now, there's no individual waiting to speak, and I am going to read the written public comment.
Okay.
So the first public comment is submitted by Darius Kemp. The comment reads, how can we get more operators to participate and help with the creation and growth of the cannabis apprenticeship program? That concludes the first public comment. Let me go back to the phone line to check if there's any individual waiting to speak. Madam Chair, as of now, there's no individual waiting to speak.
Excuse me, I know that one of my coworkers has been in the queue for about 30 minutes waiting. She's texting me right now.
Did she press *3?
She said yes.
Is it okay? So I can't control the queue over here.
And Doug, I don't see anyone raising their hands, but do you happen to have your friend's name? If he or she provide his name or her name.
Kristen Heidelbach.
Kristen Heidelbach. Let me take a look. Hold on 1 second. There you go. I'm going to unmute Kristen.
Thank you.
Kristen, you are unmuted now, and your 2-minute starts. Please proceed. Kristen, can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me? Speaker, you're up to speak. Madam Chair, I unmute on this individual, but she didn't seem to enable the speaker of her phone.
Okay.
She said she was speaking. Thank you.
All right. Yeah, we did not hear it come through. Ali, yes?
If public comment is finished, could we have a 5-minute break, Madam Chair, just to get?
Yes, totally. Bio break.
Thank you so much. Sorry.
Yeah, no. We need to actually put that into, we actually need to put it into the agenda itself. Okay.
Yeah, and sorry for interruption, Madam Chair. One reminder though, for individuals who would like to provide public comment even after this meeting, they can always provide their comment in writing to send that to our office or RDA, our kind of vendor to support this meeting. So with that, I think we can, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Hi, this is Nikesh. Sorry to interrupt. I saw that there was another individual who had raised their hand, Charlie Pappas. If he still has a comment, we may want to ask him to raise his hand again. If not, then that's fine as well. But I did see his hand raised, so just want to flag it.
Got it. Thank you guys for that. Charlie, if you still comment, please do put yourself back in the queue by either raising your hand, writing your comment in the chat, or giving us a call in.
Madam Chair, I do see Charlie Pepper's hands up. I'm going to unmute him.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, but you don't need his number. Right here, over here.
Charles,
Can you hear me
thank
now?
you for calling. Your 2 minutes starts now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, I'm just finishing my bite of pizza. I wasn't getting through on the phone line, so that was a problem. First of all, thank you, Ray, for your competence and facilitation, and the whole committee as well. Just two things. It was very interesting about apprenticing, but I think for that to really work, you need the industry has to be expanded, and I would like this committee in the future to deal with as San Francisco being the forefront of medical cannabis, and then when that was the only regulation there was, that there should be changes made to the Bureau statewide on less regulatory and more inclusion of pre-existing businesses. I am one of those pre-existing businesses closed by the feds in San Francisco, and my other point would be about when employees are disgruntled, would they make complaints to the Office of Cannabis? I'm wondering how that works, and I think most cannabis employees are pretty happy to have the job. So, just curious about that. Thank you for your time again.
Thank you, Charles. So it's not unfortunately, we can't do like a quick Q&A session, so it's always only public comment for us to keep in our record. Going back to Ray, do we have any other questions?
Yes, we do, Madam Chair. I'm going to unmute this individual.
No, not questions, sorry, comments. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Mario, your 2 minutes starts now.
Yes.
Please proceed.
Hi, thank you. My name is Mario Fernandez. I'm actually a resident in Humboldt County. I like to follow these type of things because I'm on what we call our trellis committee up here, which is what we're running our our equity program and our micro loan grant loan program through. This labor peace agreement is something I would like to see included up here as well. I do have questions about how it works primarily down there in San Francisco. I am glad to see that there is a amenable relationship between cannabis and labor. I am curious about the enforcement program. So if this is to work, then there has to be buy-in from local control. And so I know that was briefly discussed earlier, whether it's through the Office of Cannabis Control or these other entities. And so there does need to be something locally done about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Glad to see that other parts of our, other regions of our industry are participating. It's great. Do we have any other folks lined up for public comment or any comments inside of the chat?
Madam Chair, I see no individual waiting in line. However, I see a couple more written comments just came in. I'm going to read them now. So the first comment reads, is there a list being formed for people interested in being a part of the future program? Some signed interest may force progress. That concludes the second written comment. And then the next comment is actually submitted by Kristen. Thank you for this transparent discussion regarding labor. My name is Kristen, and I serve as the director of the Cannabis Division for the Teamsters. I want the Oversight Committee that San Francisco has been notoriously evasive when dealing with labor peace. Some ask why they have to deal with labor unions, yet we were at the table during the legalization process, and the regulators and legislators want us there to help provide assistance to an industry moving into a legal framework. Finally, the cannabis industry is not pegged on. Regarding labor peace, many others in industries have been built on labor peace requirements, specifically hotels and restaurants in San Francisco. Thank you for bringing light to this issue. We hope we can continue to move forward together. A coalition with labor is a thoughtful relationship. That concludes the third written comment. And then there's the last comment reads, as a long-time cannabis advocate and one-time worker in San Francisco cannabis, I'm glad to hear about all these wonderful things in the works. I would like to state that I am curious as to whether or not work or programs are being considered that help disabled people find work in the cannabis industry.
Thank you.
And Madam Chair, there's another written comment just came in. It's from Kate Gonzalez. Hi, I want to write in my comment for the labor regulations. I am a cannabis worker in San Francisco and believe in the importance of the enforcement of labor peace agreements in the cannabis industry. I think there needs to be a focus on already existing businesses and not just incoming applicants. My store is in the process of joining a labor organization, but I continue to see my employer do things that undermine the process and feel there's no support for us during the process. That concludes the last comment, Madam Chair. And sorry to interrupt. Actually, there's one more individual waiting in line to speak, and I'm going to unmute this individual.
Okay.
Hello, caller. Your 2 minutes starts now. Please proceed.
Thank you to members of the committee and the staff. My name is Rudy Gonzalez, and I'm the Executive Director of the San Francisco Labor Council, AFL-CIO. I appreciate the thoughtful discussion and the hard work of this oversight body and OEWD in particular. I agree with and echo many of the comments that have been made around the importance of labor and community partnerships with respect to the LPAs. I think it's also important to stress and emphasize that LPAs are a good first step through the applicant and licensee process. But to promote worker standards, protections, and harmonious relationships for both the workers and the businesses, I think we really should strive for collective bargaining agreements. That will be the most sustainable way to ensure not only labor peace on an ongoing basis, but that we have a workforce and a workplace that is truly held to the highest standards that we value here in the city of San Francisco. I agree that these are a good framework, and I look forward to working with this body to develop a robust apprenticeship program. We know that through apprenticeship, we can open the doors to people who have been left out, and we can provide the highest possible standards for an industry. I also want to note that the legacy businesses have a long history and tradition, but we really should think about the equity lens. When equity applicants are applying, and they're being held to these new higher standards, I think it needs to be looked at again that we have legacy businesses who are otherwise exempt from those standards. And if we're truly going to provide equity for those applicants, we should try to level the playing field. Thank you for the opportunity to give comment.
Thank you. Definitely looks like this is something that needed more time allotted to it. But we can continue that when we figure out when we have more meetings. So something that did come out of this that I think would be great, and it seems like there's a lot of interest from multiple parties, is potentially if there is either on the Office of Cannabis website or on the OEWD website, a way that we can have people kind of pre-sign up, or the people that may be interested in participating in an apprenticeship program, just to kind of start to make the case of why it's super important to get extra support in regards to this particular topic. That'd be really helpful. Cool. Okay. So that being the case, I know we said bio break for everybody. It is now 2:57. So how about we come back at 10 minutes, so, or yeah, so 3:50, I mean, 3:07? Is that okay, 3:07? Okay, cool, all right, let's go.
Chair Parks, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Director Rodriguez and team.
Thank you, Josh.
Thanks, Josh. Thank you. Thank you all. Have a good rest of the
Thank
meeting.
you so much. Really appreciate you.
Talk soon. Okay, bye.
Very good job. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. So this meeting right now is in recess, and we will come back on at 3:07. All right, everyone, we are live again. For participants to this meeting, thank you for your patience. We just finished our 10-minute recess, and the meeting is going to resume now.
Perfect. Thank you, Ray. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for sticking with us for this long. We're going to jump right back into the next agenda item, which is a presentation from the Department of Building Inspection. We usually use the acronym DBI. So if you ever hear the acronym DBI, we're referring to the Department of Building Inspection. We have a guest, Mauricio Hernandez, that's going to be giving us that presentation. You have the floor, Mauricio.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mauricio Hernandez. I'm the chief for code enforcement, and I was involved in some inspections we did in December of 2017 to early 2018 in regards to life safety inspections for some of the cannabis sites. I believe we did about 75 cannabis sites from, like I said, December of 2017 to early 2018. And these were in conjunction with the Office of Cannabis, Department of Public Health, Fire Department, and Planning Department. Overall, in some instances, we actually issue corrective action reports throughout all those 75 sites. At the moment, we have been able to have most of the sites inspected and permits have been obtained. As you can see here, it's it's a small presentation because it's basically really straightforward. We have 51 complete building permits with, I believe I forgot, I was missing one item, which is actually certificate of final completions for changes of uses from warehouses to nursery type uses. I believe we have about 25 of those certificates already in the book. We have about 30 filed permits, 34 approved issued permits. We have 2 cancellations of permits, and overall we have about 343 permits. And that's because to do with revisions of permits. So when a customer comes in and pulls a permit, there might be some more items that they need to add, so they'll obtain revision permits. So overall, we have been working since 2017 to guide most of the establishments through the whole process, and that's include after the approval of planning department. That includes our mechanical requirements, our plumbing requirements, and our electrical department. So I do apologize. I don't have much data to give you, just the numbers of the permits itself. But if you have any questions, please let me know.
Yes, we do. So one of the questions that I have for you is, can you please, before we move into everything else, can you just please walk us through how, like, when an equity applicant, because right now we're still processing equity applicants. So when a cannabis business, especially an equity applicant, starts to interact with DBI, can you please walk me through, or the committee, all through the steps that would happen in order to get a permit?
So first, what we do in our department, we don't actually look at as an equity applicant. We just look as a site. Whether somebody comes in here as a customer saying, "Hey, I'm going to be, a cultivator. I'm going to do a nursery or some type of use in a warehouse." So we guide them to the process and saying, "Hey, make sure that this is actually zoned for that area." Reach out to planning department, whether planning department will approve the permit. And then after that, then we can explain to them what they need to do, which is, make sure that mechanical, plumbing, sprinkler systems are up to code and up to date. I want to actually thank Ray, because we did actually a lot of site visits with Ray, and he was actually really key to provide us with the list and actually were able to provide the reports so that we had somebody in the process and a point of contact. So once we get somebody, let's say that we did a site visit, we write a correction notice and we write a report and items that they need to correct. For example, if there's any rooms that were done without a permit, so we'll write and say, yeah, you know what, you'll need to do a permit with a set of plans for the build out for the warehouse, for the existing warehouse, and then you'll probably need to upgrade the sprinkler system. So we'll advise them that they'll need to get a set of plans, or what is the existing condition and what is the proposed new use of the space.
So, Madam Chair, if I may, this is Ray from the Office of Cannabis. To provide a little context of what Mauricio just presented, I think there are two kind of groups of people Mauricio was referring to. For the first group, when Mauricio mentioned something about corrective actions, I believe he was referring to a group of people. They are pre-existing operators who went through the amnesty program in 2017 to get their temporary permit after the inspection joined by the Office of Cannabis, DBI, DPH, and Fire. Those sites will need to get their corrective actions solved before they can extend their temporary permit. And now, thinking about how we can get the equity applicants going through the process, I think it's a little different than that group. Basically, when our office referred them to Planning Department for Land Use Entitlement process, I believe the first step for those applicants is to go to DBI and apply for a building permit. That permit application serves as a vehicle for planning to approve the use of the site. That's the first step, because absent the land use entitlement, building department will not be able to approve the proposed work at the site. So those people, they have no corrective actions. Instead, they will need to provide all the detailed information with regard to future use of the site to building department for them to approve the process. So if I miss anything, Mauricio, please correct me if I miss anything here.
No, that's and like I said, I mean, when we get an application going, I mean, the first step it is to make sure that use is correct, or if they're gonna do a change of use, make sure that it's the right space for it, is the right code capacity. I mean, we make sure that the plans are provided with it, and that's how we do it. And sometimes we also do a pre-application meetings to make sure that the warehouse or the space in place it's actually got to comply with the requirements that we're looking for.
It looks like Ali, you have a question. Go for it. Yeah, we can't hear you, Ali. Nope. Nope. We're having.
Can you hear me now?
There you go. Yep.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you for differentiating between the two different applicant types that go to DBI. Mauricio, I have just a couple of really quick questions. How many certificates of completion? So how many applicants, whether it was equity or pre-existing, actually gotten a certificate of completion from the 100-something you've issued?
So far, and like I said, right now that is a data that I forgot to add, and it's an oversight on it, and I apologize. But so far we have about 25 because they're going through the process. And like I said, a lot of times some of these permits will get revisions, and we've got to make sure that we go back to the original permit to get the certificate. So far, I believe at the top of my head is about 25 certificates of final completion, which it went through. Let's say that used to be some type of warehouse use or some type of other use in that building, and now it is a full either site or testing site or manufacturing site.
Okay, and when you refer someone to planning, and they have to go get a conditional use permit, what's usually the turnaround time of that, from when you refer them till they come back?
That it depends, and unfortunately, the pandemic kind of put a halt in some of our process, so I can't really, I really don't want to say, yeah, it's about, a week or it's about a month. Unfortunately, I don't have the data with me. I mean, I would love to actually, if I can give you my email, I can send you either provide it with the right person that can provide you with that information. Because like I said, with the pandemic right now, everything is out of sorts right now at the moment with DBI.
Okay. And I have a last question to the point of Madam Chair. I think what would really help Madam Chair and our committee just, I believe what Nina is asking for is workflow. When I enter the door at DBI, which stations I have to stop at.
Ali, if you wouldn't mind holding 1 second. Nina, can you please mute thank you. Okay, Ali, can you repeat that?
And Director Rodriguez, just to your point, if anyone has their line unmuted and you're not speaking, please remember to mute it just so we can avoid the ambient noise. So only one person should be speaking at any given point. Thank you.
Ali, you can ask your question again. We can't hear you, unfortunately.
Ali, in the interest of time, because we're not able to hear you right now, if you have that question that you'd like for the committee to hear, then go ahead and plop it into the chat box and we'll read it out loud for you. I think you're having some technical difficulty because your mic doesn't even show as on, so it may just be a technical issue. But if you want to go ahead and submit a written comment, we'll be sure to pass it along.
And Ali, I just enabled the chat function.
And Madam Chair, while Ali may be submitting a written comment, maybe we could.
Sorry. I think there's several people. We're all having some tech issues today. Like it is not acting up right. Merch is going to retrograde. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. That's what's happening. So, Committee Member Flynn, you have the floor.
Thank you. So at our last meeting, we heard in public comment a couple of different commenters discuss one specific plan checker in DBI. It sounds like there was a kind of an identified bottleneck. People were referring to, exceptionally long response times or even no responses at all as they were trying to move through this particular desk. Unfortunately, I did not do a good job of taking notes and grabbing that specific name. Does anybody have any recollection of that? I remember that was kind of the impetus to us wanting to have this discussion with DBI. There were some specific bottlenecks we wanted to see if we could try to identify and work through.
From what I remember, because it was the point of contact that a lot of people made via the meeting that the Office of Cannabis held to have an introduction into having a point of contact at DBI. I do believe it was Cyril. It was the primary contact for cannabis folks.
That's right. Cyril is the contact person, but is not the person responsible for, he's like a liaison to assist us so that we can have communication with DBI, just open lines of communication with DBI. He's a partner with us and is responsive to us, but is not responsible for ushering everyone through. So I just want to make that clear. But as far as the bottlenecks, I think it is important to identify what those might be. And it looks, yeah.
I was remiss in not writing it down, but I can recall two different operators who called in specifically said that there is a plan checker that they need to get their stamp to move on to the next desk, and they've been stuck in that particular desk for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, and it seems to be an identified bottleneck. I don't know if anybody has any more information, or Mauricio, perhaps you're familiar with maybe one desk at DBI that things might be getting a little bit backed up at.
So unfortunately, with a bottleneck, that we're trying to work in through that channel because when a permit comes in through a process, it goes through a queue, and that permit can actually go and be also that plan check can also be reviewing a 2-story addition that somebody's doing. So unfortunately, we don't have, because of the staff that we have right now, we don't have the luxury of saying, hey, there's gonna be just the person itself that is going to be dedicated to the cannabis field, and we're just going to be doing that. We still don't have somebody for the illegal units. I'm going to give you an example. We don't have a person for that matter for illegal units in our site just to review illegal units. I know planning has, but unfortunately with DBI, we don't have that yet. We are working on some of those items. We are with the new, with the interim director and also Deputy Director Sweeney. We're actually talking and figuring out a way to separate and categorize, what permits and what descriptions we can actually follow. But I think that's the unfortunate part, that when we get a permit itself through the door, it's not labeled, yes, it's going to be a cannabis, so it's going to go here. It's going to be a legal unit, it's going to go here. Or it's going to be this type of, unfortunately, we don't have that at the moment. And I know Cyril is trying to juggle so many things at that point, and I think that's what's happening right now. So we are trying to work through that bottleneck and figure out the process.
Thank you. Do you have a sense right now for what the queue looks like? Maybe what the longest queue at a given desk that most operators would have to move through? Are we talking about 2 weeks? Are we talking about 2 months? So we can try to get people an accurate sense of how long that they might be held up at these specific points.
So at the moment, it's kind of hard to say because of the pandemic. I mean, even an over-the-counter permit is being requested right now to set up an appointment. So even if you're doing a simple kitchen remodel permit right now, it's an over-the-counter plan check or permit. You need to set up an appointment to actually come in through the door so that we can work with you in that process. So I can't really say. I mean, I'm happy to send you any information once I we're done here at the at this committee, then I can actually talk to Cyril and maybe we can actually sit down and provide you with a timeline of when the expectations are.
That would be really helpful. I think that's what many of the applicants and people are looking for is, okay, you know, I scheduled my first meeting, you know, initially at intake. You know, roughly how long is that going to take? And then as I move to mechanical, as I move to electrical, as I move through these processes, you know, maybe a potential retailer, the desks that have to move through, roughly what is the queue for each one of those desks, and then a potential distributor, what is the queue that might look like for them, just to give people an understanding so that they can back plan and look at this and try to allocate resources to be prepared for whatever the queue might be.
All right, so let me work with Cyril and provide you with that information. I'll send you an email with all that information in regards to the backlog and when is the expectations with DBI. Because like I said, at the moment right now with the pandemic, I mean, we're still trying to review some of our old permits from when we moved. I mean, also we have to put into account that DBI moved to a new building, so it's kind of hectic. And right now we're also working, some of our staff is working remotely. So, you know, that's also another factor to put into account.
Of course. So, it's very much appreciated. You know, we understand the circumstances. I think the purpose of this is to just try to get some general sense of what that timeline looks like. Obviously, we're not going to be holding anyone to it. And that would be enormously helpful. We appreciate it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Madam Chair, before we move on, Ali submit his comment through the chat, and I'm going to read it out right now. Can we get a workflow diagram of the process of DBI from the point the permit applicant walks in to the building to the different stations they need to go through? For example, mechanical, electrical, fire, etc.
Yeah.
Rick, before you continue, can everybody please mute themselves if you're not speaking? We're getting some feedback and we can't hear the comment.
Thank you, David. I'm going to read the question again. From Ali Jamali, can we get a workflow diagram of the process of DBI from the point a permit applicant walks in to the building to the different stations they need to go through? For example, mechanical, electrical, fire, etc.
Yes, actually, if you go to our sfgov.org, you will actually be able to find a chart, but I will be happy to send you our process. Like I said, I think Aaron, I have your email because I know I work together with you in some of the sites. So I probably just add Mr. I'm sorry if I'm not saying correctly, Ali. I can, if you send me your email, or I can send you my email, I can add you to it and I can send you our links where you can see our flow chart and how the permit goes from intake to file to being issued. And I can do that for you.
Hi, Mauricio. This is Nikesh from the Office of Cannabis. And if you could actually send that material to a representative at the OOC, either Ray or myself, we'll make sure that it gets passed along to all of the Oversight Committee members.
Okay, I will certainly do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. It definitely feels like there's some progress being made. Mauricio, I know you said that when you guys get an applicant to come in, you guys don't identify whether it's an equity applicant or cannabis, or general cannabis applicant. The reason why we bring that up and the matter of equity is so important is because when the ordinance was created, it said that equity applicants would have priority permitting processes in order to be able to get their business up and running. And because cannabis is still an essential business, that's why we're also trying to get people up and running, because on an economic report provided by the city, they said about 40% of all businesses might not be coming back because of the pandemic. So there is concern around the fact that this is an essential business, and equity applicants, in order to qualify, were supposed to be of low income. That being the case, the lengthy time that it takes to get through all of the permit process all the way through. It is lengthy through every department. We're just trying to open up, the bottlenecks so that we can actually see folks that were harmed by the war on drugs by either being blocked out of receiving financial loans because of a felony status, or because or not being able to get a Pell Grant because of it, as well as a plethora of other factors. We're working towards equity from policies that were created that really harm the communities. And now that we have the opportunity to create new policies, we want to make sure that implementation is running smoothly. And we do understand that we are in a global pandemic that none of us could have prepared for. And as well as there's just a human process. So we understand that everyone's human going through this, and we would like to work together with everybody, including your office, to be able to get these new ways of functioning moving forward. I know San Francisco has an Office of Racial Equity, and they're looking to create better policy all the way through every department. And the Cannabis Equity Program is actually one of the very first programs that were established on racial equity, diversity, and inclusion frameworks. So we were really looking to work with every department to make this a successful program to potentially be modeled through every industry that we have, to ensure that there is racial equity, diversity, and inclusion in our city moving forward. So just to kind of give a little bit more context to some of the conversation that we're having. I will open the floor if there's nothing else.
Chair Parks, there is another comment from Ali in the chat that I'm happy to read.
Okay, yes, please do.
Yes, this is a new one. Can we get work with you if we have questions or need help navigating DBI? We need more resources within DBI, and it would be extremely helpful to have more than one contact person at DBI.
Yeah, I'm happy to assist with anything. I mean, my email is actually on our website, or I know I've been working with Ray, in regards to the previous inspections that we did a couple years ago. And yeah, I'll be happy to provide my information as well.
Thank you so much for making yourself available. Communication is everything. So I am going to open up public comment. So for members of the public, if you have something that you want to provide as far as feedback or comments, please either enter into the chat queue, call in. I'll read the number again. Or raise your hand if you are viewing with us virtually, and Ray will begin to call it off. Okay, amazing. David, yes, we've posted the dial-in number, which is 1-408-418-9388, and the access code is 146-043-2427. To get in, please press *3 to be entered into the queue.
Madam Chair, as of now, we have 2 individuals waiting to speak.
Perfect. Let us get started with public comment.
Hello, Michael. Thank you for calling. Your 2 minutes starts now. Please proceed. Hello? Hello? Can you hear me? Michael?
It's Michael Richardson, I think.
Hello, Michael. Can you hear us?
What Michael? Not me, is it?
Madam Chair, sounds like this individual has some technical issues. I'm going to move on to the next speaker.
Okay.
Hello?
Malcolm, thank you for calling. Your 2 minutes starts now. Please proceed.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
So my name is Malcolm Joshua White. I'm an equity applicant at 985 Folsom in San Francisco under the company Mirage Medicinal. I was an operator also under Prop 215. And I just really, my comment is after hearing the DBI's explanation is actually, I'm just stunned and like dismayed, honestly, to hear that there is no identification or prioritization of equity applicants at DBI. And I want to be very clear what that means under my experience. This equity program that was meant to get equity back into people that were formerly incarcerated by the war on drugs, they are eroding the equity of my ability to gain equity in my own business because of the extraordinary long wait times. I submitted my digital construction documents 2 months ago. They popped up last week. Okay? It's funny, you submit something digitally, it's supposed to happen faster. It happens slower. Okay? Now I have to go seek investment again because of the long wait period. And now they want more equity. I might not even end up with the name of Mirage Medicinal on my business at the end of this prioritization equity cannabis process. You know how like insane that is? Every day I end up with less equity. And it's because of DBI. And this guy had no answers. It's really, really, really intensely maddening. Those documents cost $100,000 from my business to put together. And there's no urgency for an essential business. I'm on 6th and Folsom. I'm going to be hiring locally. It's the hood over there. No urgency, no nothing. And at the end of this, I'm going to end up with, despite the lofty ambitions and the OOC backstopping me, with less than I had in the beginning because of this DBI process and how slow it is and how opaque it is. It's a huge disappointment. That's my comment.
Thank you for your comment. Madam Chair, we are going to move on to the next speaker.
Yeah.
Hello, speaker. Your 2 minutes starts now.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, commissioners, Commissioner Parks, Director Marissa Rodriguez. This is Liz Jackson Simpson, CEO of Success Centers. I want to echo the last speaker's comment. We're really concerned about the extraordinary amount of time that it takes for equity applicants to get through the hopper. Is very time-consuming and very costly for a system and an industry that was specifically set up with an eye toward equity. It is very disheartening and disturbing. My question was, how can we expedite the process and create a system by which equity applicants are tagged in the system as they do with the local business enterprises or other systems of that sort, where there are priorities for minority-owned businesses, equity-owned businesses, local businesses. We need to figure out a system within DBI and planning that will expedite things for the equity applicants. The other question that I had was, again, around the timeliness and the prioritization period. So anything we could do to help to expedite that, if Director Rodriguez could somehow, identify equity applicants as their process through her office so that when they get to the other departments of approval, that they get some sort of prioritization, because it defeats the purpose of having an equity program when we continue to make the onus on completing these things on the folks that have been harmed in the first place. So thank you for allowing me to share.
Thank you, Liz. Your testimony was very important.
Madam Chair, as of now, there's no individual waiting to speak. However, we do have a number of written comments, and I am going to read them now. So the first, hold on one second. Let me make sure. Okay, the first question is from Henry. His question reads, can that information be shared to all regarding DBI process, please? My email here is henry at Packer, PACAMCAL, packercal.com. And that concludes his comment. And the next comment is submitted by Chris Calloway. What steps would need to be taken to have DBI prioritize equity applications like low-income housing projects? That concludes Chris' comment. And I think that's it.
Thank you. Okay, there obviously, there is a lot of issue around the fact that when this equity program was created, it was created and communicated to individuals that signed up to be a part of it that there was going to be a priority processing. And it seems like on multiple levels between department to department to department, we've seen and heard that there is not a lot of interdepartmental communication, or that just because the Office of Cannabis prioritized equity applicants, it didn't mean that any of the other departments prioritize equity applicants, which is really insane because the ordinance said that there was going to be a priority processing of it. So I'm wondering also if we can help answer to the, for the committee, who is in charge of ensuring the accountability of an ordinance being communicated and those pipelines being confirmed through every department that something needs to touch once an ordinance is put into place. I don't know who answers that question, but I think it's something that we have to really take into heavy consideration because, like, the cannabis industry, because of the stigma around it due to the past policies, like, we are now legal. We also have a lot of written record that says that cannabis shouldn't have been made illegal in the first place, and it was used as a tool against racial groups in order to break up community leadership, in order to make them look bad in media and to create these social stigmas around certain groups of people. So the intentionality around the equity program is really a racial justice issue to be able to dismantle the things. I know I've heard that in the realm of DBI, they've been only told to prioritize housing, but I'm wondering what's going on with that, as well as what happened and how they're handling, because in March, there was like many articles in the newspaper about changing of leadership and issues around corruption that were playing out in DBI. So I'm wondering how that played out into actually being able to process process people properly. And again, like I said, I understand that every single person is human that are a part of this system. So I'm just hoping that we can address human to human. How can we actually make equitable business and living situations for people that are really looking to become productive members into society? Everyone who has paid and are going through the process should not be looked at as some illegal group of people, or like that, or some criminal element. Because if we were trying to remain critical, like criminal, none of us would have joined on or signed up or been spending hundreds of thousands of dollars of money, like getting into partnerships that, are actually more detriment to our mental health than they are to helping us like start our businesses. The idea was to give people an economic hand up to be able to provide jobs, to be able to provide a place for people to be rehumanized. So really looking to work with you, Mauricio Hernandez, to figure out how we can better this process for our operators.
Okay. And I understand the concern, but if you look at the chart, I know I wasn't, and I do apologize, I thought I wasn't ready for some of the other items. But if you look at it, 304, if DPI since 2017 has actually worked with some of these permit holders to gain 343 permits. That's included plumbing, building, and electrical permits. So, and I understand, and sometimes it takes more than just saying, okay, I'm going to get a permit going, and here's my permit, and I need it in 2 weeks. You know, a lot of times it requires mechanical. A lot of times you're actually talking about a warehouse that is probably 80 years old or 100 years old. You know, so it's not, you know, we're saying, yeah, you know what, it's going to be a process that is going to be 2 weeks, and we understand that. And I know DBI is changing. We're trying to implement, you know, the process, and I am going to actually sit down with the deputy director for permit services and provide it with a breakdown of if we have any equity applicants in the queue that haven't been the plans haven't been looked at, and I'm going to look at that fulsome issues to see whether we can help out that customer as well. Okay.
I have a question. Madam Parks, this is David. Just understanding completely the sensitivity and importance of this issue, I'm just wondering if an effort to continue to move towards the policy conversation, yes. Given that we're nearly at the originally scheduled meeting end time, if maybe now there's the possibility to identify next steps for the committee, or as you mentioned, if there's a need for specific areas of research that we identify some of those next steps to continue to move this forward, yet sort of continue on through the agenda.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you for bringing us back. I know it is, you know,
an important one. Yeah, it's an important one.
Yeah, definitely. And it took us a while to get here. So I would like to make a motion that the committee puts together some recommendations for DBI in how we would like equity applicant, or how we see their department interacting with cannabis and our equity community moving forward. I think that would be helpful for us to provide some framework as an oversight committee in regards to some things that might be helpful.
Second.
Thank you.
Oh, yes. I mean,
so the motion and the second was about providing recommendations for DBI from the oversight committee.
Okay, and so go ahead and put that to vote. Sorry, I'm just pulling up my screen.
All right.
Sorry, y'all. Why don't we go ahead with Ali? And Ali, if you're still having some mic issues.
He said he raised his hand.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. We have Aaron. Aaron, are you with us?
It looks like his camera and his microphone are off.
Okay.
I'm back. Sorry about that.
No problem. The motion was just an effort to move forward, was just that the committee is going to develop recommendations to DBI.
What kind of recommendation?
Oh, is that Sean?
What kind of recommendation?
The recommendations were on recommendations on how, like, what are the how DBI can more productively work with cannabis equity applicants, and considering what the intent of the program is.
And actually, Madam Chairman, I don't just a question. I don't if I just wanted to sort of check in about what you're thinking about the motion, because certainly build in or identify as a needed step moving forward, and certainly we would vote to adopt those. And so I just wanted to make sure if we need to do a vote on the plan to develop the recommendations.
I mean, well, Yes, why don't we just continue to take this vote through
Okay.
so we move it, and then we'll move it on to the agenda for the next for our policy conversation that's going to happen on an extra hour long.
Okay.
Session.
Just checking in. I'll continue through. So Aaron.
Madam Chair, this is Nikesh. What I may suggest is you could put the recommendation that this be tabled to the policy conversation and put that to a vote.
Okay.
Just for formality's sake.
All right. Okay. So in that case, I make a motion to table this, to put this item inside of the policy conversation. And is that what basically you're telling me to do?
I'm merely suggesting that, but what I am suggesting is that you could recommend or put it to a vote that this discussion be had in full during the policy conversation section, and the goal should be to come up with a list of recommendations for DBI to help better engage with business applicants in light of the legislation around developing the equity program more generally. Something.
So then, okay, so I make the motion to add this to the policy discussion that I will put onto the. You know what? Doesn't matter. We're gonna just move on to this item, and I'm just gonna put this into the future agenda items at the end of our thing, so we can move forward. Does that work for everybody? Cool. All right. All right. So in that case, thank you so much, Mauricio, for your time. Definitely do appreciate that, your presentation and everything that you did. Is he still with us, or did he?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, perfect. I'm like, all of a sudden, I lost your thing. So thank you so much, Mauricio, for taking the time. And we understand that this topic is a very heated topic. So thank you for making space and being very civil in the way that you're addressing it with us. And we really, really hope that we can work with you and whoever else has the ability to, and I understand that the capacity is low. It is low everywhere, but seriously, people are paying anywhere from like $9,000, $25,000 on spaces that they can't even program or run any businesses out of. And what we're trying to do is move that along so that they can actually operate after a 3-year waiting period for everything else. So much.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. All right. Moving on to our last few agenda items.
Did I understand correct that Mauricio had committed to working on the equity applicants if they're identified?
Yes, this is David. I believe he had said that he would go back to look within the queue to identify if there were existing.
Can we please put that in the record and in bold, please? That would be awesome. Thank you.
Yes, we will definitely. Emma will definitely have that front and center in this conversation in the minutes. Thank you, Ali.
All right. Okay, so, all right. Item number 7 is policy recommendations. Just as a reminder, we have 7 minutes left of our meeting. So just for time wise, can we stay like 10 extra minutes just to get the next meeting worked out? Just hold on, Ali, go ahead.
Would you mind if we're going to do a longer meeting? Maybe we do a condensed version of policy and then make that the first item agenda on the prolonged meeting as well.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
All right.
Madam Chair, this is Nikesh. Just to the extent that this may be something to consider with a time limit, for agenda item 7, the OOC and RDA was going to give a brief recap of the conversation that was had around policy and legislative recommendations by the committee in March of earlier this year. That presentation, I anticipate, will likely take 10 to 15 minutes. If that's the case, would you like us to proceed with that presentation for this meeting, or to start off the next meeting with that presentation and then launch into conversation then?
I would like to, good question. Things that I'm considering on this one is that at least if we have you guys give this presentation, then we have a greater context of what the next meeting is going to be about. However, I am worried about is that we do this presentation, and then there's much longer because we also do have to take public comment on this item, and then figure out how we're going to set the agenda. So this might have to be one of the first things that we actually do on the next full meeting, so that everybody is fresh, because this is a huge conversation around policy recommendations.
And to that end, maybe one suggestion is to use the remaining time that we have for today's meeting to set the future agenda, recognizing that the more items that we put on there, the longer these meetings, they're all very substantive conversations, right? So maybe crafting the next agenda very intentionally to leave a lot of time for this particular conversation.
Yes, that works. All right, so I'm going to open the floor to public comment in that case in regards to policy with this agenda item, so that we can move to the next one. If there are members of the public, if also Dave, can you share again the call-in number?
Yeah.
If there are members of the public that have comment to give in regards to policy changes and policy recommendations, please do put yourself in the queue, or type your comments into the chat. And remember to put yourself in the queue. It is *3.
Madam Chair, as of now, there is one individual waiting to speak, and I'm going to unmute this individual. Hello, speaker. Your 2 minutes starts now. Hello? Can you hear me? Hello? Charles? You have your hands up. Hello? Can you hear me?
I'm here.
All right.
Sorry.
Yep, your 2 minutes starts now. Please proceed.
Okay, thank you. Charlie Pappas again. I think I don't understand why your agendas have to be decided now. It seems like you should decide the agenda a couple of weeks before your meetings. But I think each of you should weigh in on 2 or 3 things that could be on the agenda. I was a member of the Cannabis Commission in Berkeley, and we worked on our agenda 10 days before the meetings, and then published it a week before for everyone to look at. Your agendas, I'm sorry to criticize, but your agendas are pretty light to begin with when they are published, and they're just the items, and there's no background info, and there's no minutes of the previous meeting. So that would be a hopefully constructive comment taken in the right way, and I would hope your next meeting could be maybe later after the election, when there might be more relevant issues or more to consider. Thanks a lot for your time and work. I know how hard it is being part of a commission like yours. Take care.
Thank you for your comment, Madam Chair. As of now, there's no individual waiting to speak.
Okay. All right. Anything in the chat queue?
Looks like there's none, but let me double check one more time. Hold on 1 second. Madam Chair, I see none written comments submitted.
Okay. So we're going to move on then to agenda item number 8, which is a general public comment. So if you have any other members of the public, if you have any other public comment in regards to anything that we've talked about or anything that we will talk about in the future, you think we should talk about in the future, this is the time that you should call in and give that feedback to us before we set this next agenda.
And Madam Chair, this is Nikesh. Before we go to general public comment, I think there's one item 8 that's before item 9, the general public comment section. It's the implementation of strategies. So
Okay. Well, in mine it says number 8 and number 9 says number 9 says proposed future agendas. So this is on the facilitator guide. So right.
So I think there may have been a mistake.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the agenda has 10 items, and the 9th item is the public general comment. So
yeah. Okay.
All the same. Let's resolve 8 and then.
Cool. Okay. So we did. So 8 then is around implementation. So since I don't have it on here, I propose for implementation to do the same thing, and we put it on high priority for our next.
Can everybody go on mute? That's not Nina.
I know there's like typing and all the things. Okay. So yeah, that's what I propose. Like that's what I motioned to the committee is that we take item 8, which is the conversation around implementation, just like we did with the policy, and then we move it to high priority on our next meeting that we have. Anybody want to second? Are we good? We're good.
Second.
Cool.
And Madam Chair, I hate to do this again, but before we can put it to a vote, it just has to.
Public comment on this one before the vote. Okay.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. It's like it's pushing everyone. It's like we're in between dinner and done. So excuse my corny jokes. Public comment. Anybody have any comments in regards to implementation that should be discussed, or you think that we should be discussed, or anything of that nature? Please do call in, add something into the chat queue, or raise your hand if you are viewing virtually. Ray, do we have anything?
Madam Chair, at this moment, we do not have any individuals waiting along, and there's no written comments made.
Okay. So that means we can move on to 9, which is general public comment. Cool.
Sorry to interrupt, Madam Chair. I think we need to take a vote. We need to take a vote for item 8 before we can proceed to item 9.
Thank you. Got it. Dave, can you take a vote for us? And that's just to move implementation onto high priority for the next meeting that we have.
Yes. See, so can you just repeat that?
The motion was to due to with implementation recommendations for us to move that like we did to policy into high priority for the next meeting. And Jessica seconded that.
Okay, seat number 8, Ali.
Aye. Oh, it works.
Seat number 9, Aaron.
Aye.
Seat number 10, Jessica.
Aye.
Seat number 11, Doug.
Aye.
Seat number 12, Sean.
Aye.
Seat 13, Nina.
Aye.
Seat 14, Jesse.
Aye.
Seat 15, Teresa.
Aye.
Seat 16, Sarah.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously.
Beautiful. We're just knocking out this agenda. Okay. General public comment. This is for, and it is like, this is really important for members of the community to be able to chime into, especially before we set our next agenda. This is an opportunity for you guys to let us know what should be prioritized. So, so far we have the policy recommendations and the conversation around that for our next meeting, and we have the implementation prioritized. So members of the public, please call in or raise your hand or put your comments in the chat. Once again, that phone number is 408. Oh, whoa, where'd it go? Sorry. It is, oh, there's so many things in here. I lost the number. Oh, here, 408-418-9388, access code 1460432427, and then press *3 in order to put yourself in the queue. Do we have anything coming in?
Madam Chair, as of now, there's no individual waiting to speak.
Okay. Remember, you guys can always communicate with the Office of Cannabis to provide them with anything that you guys have of concern, and they can provide a communication to us as a committee if something does come up. So our very last job here, you guys, is to set our next meeting. So we have October, right? And then there's November, which is the election, and then it's the end of the year. What do you guys feel as far as timing on the meeting goes?
I think November after the election would be helpful. I think there's a lot of footwork that's needed to be done before that time right now, for both in cannabis and the USA.
Oh yeah. Is that okay? Cool. Jamal, Ali.
I agree. I was just trying to make my mic work.
Gotcha. Okay, so after the election, what day is the election? Like, what is the physical day of the week that the election is?
Tuesday, November 3rd, or November, what is it? 6th.
So we should have maybe the week after the election, and then we can have the Office of Cannabis and RDA send out a doodle poll to see which day of that week.
November 10th would be good.
So we have a suggestion for November 10th from committee member Richardson.
Richard.
Sorry.
Sorry, I meant November 3rd, by the way.
November 3rd is election day.
November
The 10th works for me too.
So Thursday the 10th.
Tuesday the 10th.
Tuesday the 10th. Okay. Tech difficulties. I'm so sorry.
It doesn't work for me because I have to be in equity leaders convening that day. So if you don't mind me not being present, that's okay. But I just want to put that out there for the 10th. It's mandatory that I attend.
Okay. You said what was this for? Equity leaders?
Yeah, I'm assisting with our office's racial equity plan, or not just our office, but for all of ADM. So that's a new role for the Office of Cannabis in light of the fact that we're passionate about this work. So that's where a good number of us will be.
Okay. And that's not a public meeting? Okay, that's just okay.
It's with the HRC.
Gotcha. Okay.
That doesn't seem like a good idea for us to do it without these, to me.
Yes. And I would like to hear what comes out of that meeting as a report back as well. Because like Director Rodriguez was saying, is that we've done a lot of work and very passionate in regards to racial equity, in regards to rolling out our program in the cannabis industry. So I think that's very relevant.
Madam Chair, how about the November 17th?
And it also does not have to be a Tuesday, but is that the day that works? Are Tuesdays the best for you?
I mean, I can do other days. Tuesdays is the best, but I can do other days.
Got you. Okay. Just we'll figure this out. Teresa.
Can we do the normal procedure with the doodle poll? I think that's more effective.
Okay.
Or
Yeah.
they're in there for the time.
Yeah, for sure. So again, if we can just get RDA, the Office of Cannabis, to send out a doodle poll for the second week of November, so the week after the election, and we'll figure out within that week's time frame.
Madam Chair, this is Nikesh. That sounds great. We'll go ahead and set up a doodle poll, prioritize that week, and also incorporate another hour or so, assuming that we can, and sort of get feedback on that as well. But we haven't forgotten. We'll factor that in and move forward.
Appreciate that you took our comments to heart. Thank you. Thank you. Awesome. Okay, so proposed future agenda items have included the policy recommendation conversation at the top of that meeting, and then implementation as the secondary item. So it would be the report back from the Office of Cannabis and updates, then it would go into the policy recommendations, and then the implementation recommendations is what we have so far. Is there anything else that the committee can foresee that we need to have a conversation about during this time?
Madam Chair, this is Nikesh again. To the extent that this is helpful, I get the feeling that the conversation with DBI in the check-in was particularly helpful for framing some of the future conversations. And if that's the case, are there any other departments that have non-voting members that you'd like to hear from that might be able to help that conversation, keeping in mind the sort of time limits and challenges as well? We just wanted to throw that out.
For sure. With other committee members that are stakeholders in the cannabis industry, are there any other departments that you guys can recommend to give us a report back? Because we've gotten something from SFPD, from OEWD, from planning, and from DBI. Is there anybody else that you feel like we should have an open line of communication with for this meeting?
Have we heard from planning? Can we get an update maybe from planning? Because it seems like after talking to DBI that the cross bottleneck comes from DBI to planning and back.
So maybe an update from planning? Is that an official motion to put that on the agenda?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to get a small update from planning.
Anybody seconding that motion from Ali? Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, awesome.
So it was just an update from planning. Did I get that?
Right.
Madam Chair, again, just in the interest of guiding that conversation around potentially getting an update from planning, is there anything in particular that you would like to have planning or representative from planning speak to?
It's mostly around flow and see the progress of how people are getting through. Like who's getting a facility and moving on.
Yeah, basically that's just kind of trying to figure out so we can make it more efficient for everybody. That's all. I'm sure it's just a couple of numbers. It'll be quick.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. Just continued oversight, you know. Just trying to do our volunteer jobs here, Nikesh. That's all we're trying to do. All right. Amazing. So this is cute. This is already a very full agenda because the policy discussion and the implementation is going to take up a lot of time. So I want to be wary about packing this full of anything else. But I want to say also that we have gotten through a lot considering what we had said in March. We have gotten through a lot of that, and we're seeing a lot of that being put into motion, you know. So thank you everybody on here, from RDA to the Office of Cannabis to every single one of the committee members, voting and non-voting, as well as the members of the public, for making time to make this happen and to see things move forward. So that being the case, I'm going to open up the floor for public comment in regards to our agenda. If any of the members of the public have anything to say, please give us a call in or raise your hand and Ray will unmute you, or enter it into the chat.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am going to check here to see if anyone is waiting. See none for verbal comment, and I'm going to check the written comment now. See none. I think we have no public comment for this item, Madam Chair.
Okay. All right. Well, that being the case, this item of the agenda is closed.
Madam Chair, just a quick question. Did you put the recommendations to a vote already for the future agenda? Did you?
No, we did not. I jumped the gun just because I didn't hear any other feedback from the committee members. I was like, oh, you guys are happy. Okay. For the official purposes of process, let's just take a vote on what we have, and then we will close the site.
Okay, does anyone make a motion?
Make a motion to approve the agenda recommendations as is.
I'll second that.
Okay, and seat 8, Ali, how do you vote?
Aye.
Seat 9, Aaron.
Aye.
Seat 10, Jessica.
Aye.
Seat 11, Doug.
Aye.
Seat 12, Sean.
Aye.
Seat 13, Nina.
Aye.
Seat 14, Jesse.
Aye.
Seat 15, Teresa.
Aye.
16, Sarah.
Aye.
And the motion passes unanimously.
Perfect. All right, you guys, thank you all for your time. Please stay hydrated. The air is really bad outside. Do what you guys can to be mindful of your health as we move forward in being essential businesses in the city and in the state. And we will see you guys on Sunday on the second week of December. All right.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good job again. Thank you, everybody.
Everyone take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Stay safe, everybody.
Yeah.